Story 1. Sister's entitled kids drew on my walls, destroyed my garden, and hit my dog, so I kicked them out. After 2 days, my younger sister and her family, which includes her husband, and 2 kids, 3F, 5M, were visiting my husband and I and staying at our home for a week. A little background. We don't live in the same state. I've had kids of my own, but they are young adults now and out of the house. My sister is much younger than me and is still in the young family stage. We've always had a pretty close and good relationship despite our age gap. My sister does gentle parenting. I'd never heard of that before she came to stay with us because I guess I'm out of the loop since my kids are grown now. She explained to me that gentle parenting means they don't do timeouts, don't do grounding, etc., but instead just talk about their feelings. I thought that was a bit odd because it sounds like there is zero discipline, but didn't say anything as to not rock the boat. Until I saw gentle parenting in action and was appalled. During the first 2 days of their stay, her daughter drew on my walls with crayon, and her son pulled up flowers I had recently planted in my garden bed and threw a rock at my car parked in the driveway. To top it all off, they both kept constantly pulling my golden retriever's hair and hitting my dog in the face. My dog is very sweet and a little on the older side, so she's very calm. She never bit, attempted to bite, or did anything that would harm or spook the kids. In every instance, I was expecting my sister or her husband to discipline the kids. They never did, so I did, or at least I tried. Just me telling her kids to stop or scolding them in the slightest made my sister lose her mind. She told me, "It's not my place to discipline them." I told her, "Someone has to because they're messing up my home, but I agree it should be their parents scolding them." However, it seems their parents are not willing to. I told her they need a fairly stern punishment for what they've been doing, and she started going off about how they refused to spank their kids like we were spanked as kids. I told her, "I'm not suggesting she spank her kids, but a stern talking to and making them clean up what they destroyed would be a good idea." She said what her kids were doing was not worth what I would call discipline. All she did in every instance was ask them, "What kind of feelings are you having that made you do that?" And that was it. So I realized this behavior was not going to stop. My husband and I told them they need to find a hotel or go home. Even though we had planned for them to stay a full week, we couldn't handle more than 2 days because of the gentle parenting. I told her the gentle parenting is going to cause her kids to have a very hard life and rude awakening someday, probably even jail time. She argued back and really lost it when I told her, "This hippy-dippy gentle parenting shit is a scam and will ruin your kid's life," which I regret now, but boiled over in the moment. Now she won't speak to me, and our mom says I'm in the wrong for kicking them out when they planned on staying longer. Am I the jerk? Commenter. It would have worked way better than using violence and shouting. Most chronic negative childhood behaviors are the direct result of the parenting techniques of physical and verbal abuse and domination. Edit. What you did with their children was, in fact, gentle parenting. If they can't behave with a dog, then you remove the dog from them. What you did to your sister was also gentle parenting. It's about having boundaries. It sounds like she has none with her children, and that is as bad or worse than abusive parenting. OP. I never used violence towards my children, and I should have said raised voice instead of yell, because that is more the point I was trying to get across. It's not realistic to expect a kid to only be exposed to a super calm tone 100% of the time and then be able to deal with a non-calm tone in the real world when they're grown. There are definitely circumstances where a raised voice is appropriate. If you don't agree, then that's okay, but I guess you're a monk. Update 1. I read the comments. Sounds like my sister's version of gentle parenting is not actually gentle parenting. However, the real gentle parenting lots of you are describing still sounds like an odd choice of parenting in my view, and if it was around when my kids were little, I can't imagine it would have worked on them. I guess this new generation of parents are just doing things differently. Not sure how that's going to work out in the long run for society, but to each their own. The world isn't gentle. How are all these gentle parented kids going to deal with the real world when someone yells at them or does any of the things gentle parenting doesn't include? If our world was a perfect utopia, then gentle parenting sounds great, but it isn't and it's not realistic to me. I don't plan on ever inviting my sister over to stay at my home again if her kids will be with her. That is, If she ever decides to even speak to me again, which even after all this, I do hope our relationship is mended because she is still my sister. I just can't deal with her kids. Commenter. Hi, gentle parent here. This isn't gentle parenting. You're still allowed to say no in gentle parenting, and part of me feels this is fake with how weirdly focused you are on gentle parenting itself instead of your sister's weird behavior. OP. I'm so focused on gentle parenting because it is solely to blame for the downfall of mine and my sister's relationship, which I have always cherished. I am focused on my sister's behavior, but her behavior is being driven by her parenting style. She completely changed as a person when she implemented this parenting style. Commenter. The dog thing, sure. I'd be annoyed at your sister for not intervening. But all of the things you described are regular kid things for their ages, to be honest. And yelling at your sister and kicking them out after 2 days over it is a big reaction. If you consider pulling flowers and drawing on walls, destroying your home, I tell you to never have kids of your own, I guess. I did have kids of my own and they're grown now. They never did things like that because they knew there'd be consequences and didn't act like feral children. Commenter. It makes me happy to see so many people here defending what gentle parenting really is. It seems that OP is just posting here to justify harsh or physical punishments. It seems that the kids are less of an issue when compared to the action of either the OP or her sister. I'm going to guess that both grew up with punishments like OP describes. One goes one way and the other goes another. Your issues with each other could have been handled differently, but I'm guessing you're not going to ground yourselves. OP. I've told you my sister's kids destroyed my home and abused my dog, and that I don't condone spanking, but they need to clean up their mess and be held accountable. And what you got out of that was I'm a harsh parent. Update 2. Someone either sent my sister my original post, or she is on Reddit herself and saw it. She texted me a link to my post and said she can't believe I'm airing our family drama online. She told me she was leaning towards working out our differences, but now that I've posted it on here, she's done and blocked me. Since I can't reach her by phone, I'll address her on here since she's clearly reading this. Allison, I do love you and I've always cherished our relationship, but if you feel like you're done, then that's okay. I can't change your mind. Look at me talking about feelings. You should be proud. At this point, I'm pretty done too. So here it is. You are family, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be a pushover and allow your children to behave the way they did in my home, especially pulling Bella's hair and smacking her in the face. That was animal abuse. It was all completely unacceptable, and I don't understand how you allow them to behave the way you and Steven allow them to. Some people have suggested I send you a bill for the damage your kids caused, but I'm not going to do that. I'll pay for the repairs, but only because I know this will never happen again since your kids are not welcome back at my home unless you drastically change your parenting style and finally implement legitimate discipline. I'm still not saying you need to physically discipline them, but you need to do some form of actual discipline before it's too late and their future is ruined. I don't understand why you have decided to gentle parent, or whatever your form of gentle parenting is, and it has changed you as a person. You don't act the way you used to, and now you are offended by everything and don't agree with the way anyone else does anything. I just don't understand what happened. I encourage you to look at some of the comments on the original post to prove to you 99% of people would have done exactly what I did in the situation, and I was not just being harsh. There has to be consequences for bad behavior, or else you are doing your kids a disservice, which is not kind on your part. When you read the comments, some have good parenting advice and others are harsh, but hey, that's life. It's not so gentle. Commenter. This doesn't sit right with me. I'd suggest having a talk or some sort. OP. She's blocked me, and I can't call or text her. What do you suggest I do? Send her a note via pigeon. Commenter. Do you have any mutual friends who could send messages? OP. I'm not getting any of our mutual connections involved in this drama. If she blocked me, she clearly doesn't want to talk anyway. Update 3. Allison, not her real name, finally reached out to me to talk. She read some of the comments and sees that most people think she is neglecting her kids due to her parenting choices. She asked if I agree. I told her I think there could definitely be some changes in the way she parents. She said she had tried gentle parenting but realizes now that she has gotten it wrong. I asked what her plan moving forward is. She apologized for the way her kids acted and said her and her husband have lost friends over the way her kids act because people don't want to be around them. She said this whole ordeal has been a wake-up call. Allison said she's going to try a different parenting style since gentle parenting didn't pan out very well for her kids. She said she's going to enforce punishment/consequences but still no corporal punishment. I said I think that's great. Her worry is that the kids won't take it well, and it will cause even more problems. I told her they'll just have to get used to it. Apparently, her husband was never in agreement with the gentle parenting, and it has also caused marital issues due to the fact they didn't see eye to eye on it. Now her husband is happy she's finally come around to some form of consequences and punishment for their kids. I told her I think she's making a very wise decision. I still am not happy about what her kids did to my house and dog, but the fact she's willing to change her parenting style so that doesn't happen again makes me feel a lot less angry. And yes, I got Allison's permission to post this update. We really were able to work things out. She really is a good person, just had a lapse in judgment and parenting. Edit. Since this will be the last update/post on this issue by me, I wanted to say something about the permissive parenting versus gentle parenting styles. A lot of people commented about gentle parenting. How everyone is explaining in the comments sounds like the kid does something wrong, then the parent asks how they feel, then redirects them to a different task/activity, maybe tells them no but maybe doesn't, and they call the redirection to a different task/activity the discipline or natural consequence part of gentle parenting. That is the exact same thing as permissive parenting because there is still no legitimate punishment or consequence. I'll agree that my sister wasn't doing the form of gentle parenting everyone was describing because all she did was talk about feelings and left out the redirection and the possible no, don't do that. But even after reading all the comments, permissive parenting and gentle parenting sound very similar, if not the exact same. If kids are taught redirection is what happens when they do something wrong, they are going to be completely shocked and confused when there are real consequences and punishment and not just redirection or natural consequences in the real world. If they grow up and steal a car, the police arrest them, send them to jail, and make them pay a fine. They will think it's an incredibly harsh punishment and be shocked because all they were expecting was a natural consequence of returning the car to the owner and then moving on with their day. Relevant comment. There were a lot, but I felt like this reflected the general tone of most comments. Commenter. Simply because this is a hill I will die on. Real consequences are a crucial element of true gentle parenting. Natural consequences does not mean no consequences. Like you said, you steal a car and you get arrested. Those are the natural consequences of your actions. The same is true of gentle parenting. My kid throws a toy at me? The natural consequences are that I'm going to put that toy up because I'm not going to have someone throwing things at me. My kid draws all over the walls? They're going to clean or help me, depending on age, clean it up. They broke a sibling's toy? They're going to use their own money/toys to replace it. Redirecting is useful at a very young age before the brain has developed to make connections. Redirecting can be useful when you haven't hit the stage of needing consequences. E.g., kid is frustrated but hasn't yet thrown something. But redirecting is not the same tool as consequences, and both are vital for true parenting of all types, gentle or otherwise. Anyways, I'm glad y'all are working on it. I wish her and her husband all the best and your relationship with her as well. OP. Downvoted. The natural consequences you are describing sounds more like the natural consequence of stealing a car would be returning the car to the owner, not jail. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Abandoned by my dad, who thought I wasn't his. Now his lawyer says I owe money after he passed away because mom used my name to borrow money. Hi, so I'm in a situation right now that's too personal, and I can't imagine myself sharing this with my close friends. So, I'm here asking Reddit for an unbiased verdict instead. My dad passed away recently, like you might have already guessed, but I had no idea up until a week ago when his lawyer called me to inform me of his demise. I didn't know how to feel because I didn't share a good relationship with my father, and I hadn't spoken to him in over 10 years. I'm a 23-year-old guy now. Back when I was 12 or 13, my dad abandoned my mother and I and terminated his parental rights because he didn't think I was his child. After almost 13 years of raising me, he left abruptly and without an explanation. My mom didn't have any proper answers for me back then because I was too young. But years later, after I was old enough, She explained to me that my dad had believed that she'd been cheating on him with his brother due to their friendship. My mom and her brother-in-law went to the same high school, but my dad didn't, and he'd always felt a little out of the loop around them whenever they reunited at family events and holidays. This made him kind of insecure and jealous, and eventually, it got to a point where they'd started fighting over their friendship, and my dad had begun suspecting her of infidelity, even though she'd been nothing but loyal to him. She even tried to tell him that she'd stop talking to her brother-in-law and get a paternity test done as well, but my dad, being the kind of guy that he is, simply left and didn't bother to confirm if what he believed was true or not. My mom let him leave because if he wasn't even willing to believe a paternity test, then there was very little scope for their relationship to improve. She told me that she believed that he was the one who was probably already engaged in an affair, and the reason he was so up in arms about her friendship with his brother was because he was projecting, which could be the case, but we'll never know. After their divorce was finalized, he moved out of state and cut ties with everyone from here, including all his friends and family, which seemed a little excessive. But as you guys may have gathered by now, everything about my dad was excessive since he clearly didn't believe in the concept of moderation. Anyway, my mother and I never saw him or spoke to him again after he left. Even though I did miss him a lot, my mother was capable enough to raise me on her own with some help from her family, and she also kept in touch with her friend, my uncle, and is still going steady with him. I thought that was a little weird, but she told me that she'd been friends with this guy for ages, and she wasn't going to let such a friendship go just because of her ex-husband's insecurities and jealousy, which was a fair point, and my dad wasn't a part of their lives anymore, so it didn't make sense to sever ties either. If I'm being honest, I appreciated it because my uncle was a great guy. After my dad left, he kind of took over the whole dad thing so that I wouldn't feel like I didn't have a dad. He's the one who taught me how to shave and picked me up after all my football games, and he also bought me my first car, a second-hand one, but it was still a huge deal for both my mother and me. A lot of people, including me, did wonder why they didn't get married later on, but honestly, I think it's just platonic between them. My mother has had a couple of boyfriends after I graduated high school, and my uncle's been in a couple of relationships too. He's dating someone currently as well, but they've never ever even discussed dating each other, and obviously, I can't bring it up with either of them because that'd be weird. My point is, my dad's suspicions were all unfounded because 10 years have passed since he left, but my mother and my uncle still haven't even considered getting together, so they were never going to get together in the first place. He had nothing to worry about, and I feel like my mother was right. He just wanted an excuse to leave us, and her friendship with his brother was just the perfect opportunity for him to make an issue out of absolutely nothing and then leave while playing the victim, even though he's the one who left his wife and 13-year-old son on the basis of a hunch, which wasn't even true. So, we all know who's really in the wrong here. Once I found out the real reason why my dad had left, I found it very difficult to bring myself to forgive him and think of him as my father and someone I'd like to have a relationship with ever again. I felt wronged on a personal level, and I decided that he was gone for good and that even if he approached me again to make amends, I wouldn't forgive him. And it did happen about 5 years ago when he tried to reach out to me through Facebook when he saw that I'd graduated and wanted to congratulate me. He sent a message saying that it was wonderful for him to have the privilege of watching me grow up, even if it was from afar, and that he would love to take me out for lunch if that was something I'd be willing to do, despite whatever happened in the past. He explained that he hadn't been in the right state of mind back then and had made a lot of mistakes, leaving us being the worst of them, and since he didn't have the courage to directly approach my mother and ask her for forgiveness and a second chance, he decided to ask me for it instead. I read that message and tried to feel moved or hurt or anything at all, but felt nothing except anger and disgust at the fact that he even thought that I would just forgive him after what he did. He walked out on me as a teenager without even bothering to find out whether or not I was his son. So now, even if he was my biological father, I didn't believe that I had anything to do with him, and I didn't since after he left, he didn't bother to reach out to me until I graduated, which is a long time. So he was no longer welcome to fix our relationship since now there wasn't one to begin with either. I sent him a message saying that I wasn't interested in speaking to him and that I wanted him to stay away from me and my mother for the rest of our lives, and then blocked him. I hadn't blocked him earlier because I didn't know what the account name was since he used a fake name due to privacy reasons, but after I did, I felt relieved that he was finally out of our lives for good now, and I felt so vindicated. I never told my mother about it because I didn't want to bother her by bringing up something that she seemed to have forgotten. So she never found out about my dad's attempt to get back in touch with me, And at the time, I didn't think that it was necessary to inform her either, because if he wanted to reach out to her, then he could message her separately and didn't need to go through me. Although I do think that I should have probably worded the message I sent to my dad a little differently so he wouldn't think that neither my mother nor I were willing to rebuild our relationship with him because, to be honest, I don't know what my mom wanted, and I guess I might have made a mistake by sending that message without consulting with her first. Regardless, that was my last interaction with my dad, after which he didn't try to contact me at all, even though he knew where to find me. So I assumed that he must have let it go, and I moved on with my life. Coming to the recent past, 1 week ago, I received a call from my dad's lawyer telling me that my father had passed away about a month ago and that I needed to meet him since there was money involved. I was shocked at the news of my dad's demise, but I still tried to compose myself and told his lawyer that whatever money there was, I didn't need it and that I would like to be left out of this altogether. I was about to hang up when he informed me that I wasn't going to inherit anything, but instead, he was contacting me about the money that I owed him. Now that came as a shock to me because I didn't think that I owed my father anything at all, and I had no idea what his lawyer was talking about. I hadn't ever loaned any money from him as far as I remember, and as for whatever he spent on me during my childhood, I don't think I owed him that amount since I was literally a child. I told his lawyer that I didn't owe him any money and that he must be mistaken, but he insisted that I did take a loan of about $20,000 from him 3 years ago, and now he needed it to be returned so that it could be used to settle his medical bills. I was in shock since I really hadn't taken any amount from him, and like I said, the last time I'd spoken to him was when I graduated, and even then, I'd only told him to stay away from my mother and me. Eventually, his lawyer told me that my mother had co-signed this loan with me and I could ask her if I wanted to. And that was odd because as far as I knew, my mother wouldn't even ask my dad for a pen if it really came down to it, and here we'd apparently taken a loan of $20,000 from my dad. I told the lawyer that I'd get in touch with him later, and immediately made my way to my mother's place to ask her about what was going on. Once I got there and asked her about it, she got really serious and told me that this was none of my business, and that I wasn't supposed to answer any more calls from his lawyer, which just confirmed that something fishy was going on here. I would have followed my mom's orders without thinking twice had I been in high school, but obviously, I'm an adult now with my own life and responsibilities, so I couldn't afford to be a part of something that wasn't legally all right, and I pushed my mom to tell me exactly what was going on. But she refused and said that I needed to mind my own business. But now that I'd received a call from this lawyer, this was now part of my business because clearly she'd been up to something, and I absolutely had to get to the bottom of it. So I kept pushing and pushing until she snapped at me and told me that I needed to stay out of this or else she'd cut me out of her life instead. That was really hurtful, and I was stung because of what she said, and on top of that, the way she said it too. She'd been really rude to me, and my mother is usually an even-tempered person who rarely loses her cool, so it felt really weird to see her so flustered. I also felt very frustrated because of the way she was acting because I had absolutely every right to demand an explanation for what was happening because I just received a call from a lawyer regarding some loan that I didn't even know about, and yet somehow it existed and I was the one who was being questioned about it. So this did concern me, and my mother just kept trying to infantilize me and push me aside as if this was totally normal. And on top of that, she had the audacity to be disrespectful towards me, even though she was the one who definitely had been up to something shady. So I lost my temper at her as well and ended up saying something that I kind of regret, and I think I was out of line for saying it. I told her that if this was the way she treated Dad when he was around, then it's no surprise that he left because it's very obvious that she cannot be trusted, and I don't blame him for abandoning us. And as if that wasn't bad enough on its own, I also added that maybe he wasn't even my real father, and I should probably start calling my uncle Dad now that he's gone. I don't know where it came from or why I said it, probably because I was feeling very emotional at the time since I just learned that my real father was gone forever, and I'd never get to see him again. But even while I was saying all those horrible things to my mother, I could tell that it was beyond cruel. Before I could think of anything else, I left in a hurry and drove myself back home, and then I finally broke down and let myself cry the tears that I'd been holding back for about an hour or more. The bottom line is that I felt really awful about what I said to my mother because regardless of whatever was happening right now, she'd been a great mother to me, and I loved her. I also felt terrible about my dad's passing, even though we hadn't been in touch for ages, but it still felt like crap. So I was going through a lot of things in my head when I said what I said to my mother, and I'm afraid that I crossed a line there and overreacted. The lawyer who'd contacted me told me a day later that I no longer needed to come meet him and that the issue had been resolved, and I'm sure that my mother had set things straight, but she didn't contact me and hasn't answered my calls or texts ever since I left that day. I feel like crap about what I said and for making the situation about her personal relationships when the argument wasn't even about that in the first place. At the same time, though, I think that she does owe me an explanation because my name had popped up in something serious, but for some reason, she didn't think she needed to tell me what was going on. I'm an adult now and not a child who wouldn't be able to handle whatever it was that she needed to tell me. She obviously needed the money for something, I don't know what yet, and used my name to take the loan. And I don't know if it's morally right or wrong to borrow money from your ex-husband who abandoned you and then hide it from your son who's apparently co-signed the loan. I'm trying to convince myself that maybe she did make me sign it sometime because otherwise it's just forgery, but I'm not ready to believe that just yet. My biggest issue right now is that she and I aren't even talking right now because of what I said, and I think I might have seriously messed up here. Am I the asshole for trying to humiliate my mother by bringing up her failed marriage and alleged involvement with my uncle when she refused to tell me the truth about the money that my estranged father had loaned us? Date 1. Hey everybody, so a couple of days have passed since I put up my original post, and after reading all the comments and messages, I think I've realized that while what I said was messed up, what my mother did was even more messed up because she literally took a loan from my dad, and apparently I was the co-signer, but I didn't even know about it. Obviously, there was something shady going on there, but she didn't think that it was important enough to tell me what she was doing. And even now, she was trying to evade accountability for what happened by trying to dismiss my concerns and claiming that whatever she does is none of my business. Which, I agree with them, she doesn't owe me an explanation for every single thing she does, but if I'm involved in any capacity at all, then I think she needs to keep me in the loop and be honest with me. There's just no two ways about it. I'll admit that what I said to her was harsh and kind of cruel given that she devoted her life to raising me and had done a commendable job as a single mom, to be honest. But I did try to make things right by trying to talk to her afterward, and she's the one who didn't think I deserved to be spoken to and is avoiding me even now. I've accepted it though, and right now, I'm only concerned about whether I'll have to face any legal trouble in the future or not. I've already spoken to my lawyer about it. Thanks for the suggestion. But I'd spoken to a friend of mine who's a lawyer right away after I got to know about the loan. I have nothing to worry about as of now since my dad's lawyer hasn't been in touch with me since he texted me saying that the issue has been resolved. So I'm guessing that my mother did something to pay her debts or whatever, but I still don't know what really happened. I've texted her again and again for an answer, but with no luck, and I don't think there's any use now texting her time and again. So if she doesn't get back to me within this week, then I'll just go to her house and ask her to tell me the truth about what happened. I just have no other choice now. Update 2. I guess I didn't need to visit my mother because she visited me today. I don't even know where to start right now because now that I finally know the truth, it's all even more confusing to me in my head because I just can't imagine that my mother would keep such a huge secret from me for so many years. She insists that it was none of my business, but even then, it's just so crazy that I can't even think of her as the same person anymore. So she visited me today almost 2 weeks after our fight, and she was apologetic, but I made it clear that I couldn't forgive her fully until she told me what had happened. I also did apologize for what I said because that was absolutely unacceptable, and I'd just gotten way too carried away by my emotions at the time, but I now knew that it wasn't cool. After all that, she finally told me that a couple of years back, around the same time that my dad had reached out to me, he'd also contacted my mother, and she'd been willing to work on their relationship back then. He'd moved back here around that time, and they'd even been out together a few times, so they'd been on good terms after that. And she'd found out that one of the biggest reasons he'd left us was because he'd been suffering from bipolar disorder for a while and just wanted a fresh start in a new city because he was finding it too hard to remain in the same city and deal with the people who he knew would inevitably end up judging him if they knew about his condition. So he left, and my mother said she respected that since at least he'd admitted that he'd messed up. They'd been working on their relationship since then, and they'd wanted to tell me after a year or so. But before they could break the news to me, my dad was diagnosed with third-stage pancreatic cancer, and it wasn't looking too good for him. So my parents decided not to tell me just yet, and all their plans of getting back together were put on hold indefinitely, and I never found out about any of it because my mother put up a wonderful show of being perfectly fine. As for the loan, that had been for my uncle and not for our personal use. My uncle had told my mother that he'd run into some financial trouble with his business, and to clear his debts, he needed $20,000 at the earliest. But unfortunately, nobody that we knew personally was ready to just hand over that sort of amount at the drop of a hat. The only person my mother was sure would help her out was my dad because obviously, he was smitten with her and would do anything for her. But the hitch was that he wouldn't lend her the money if she told him the truth that it was for his brother, since my dad didn't want any contact with his family because apparently they'd all treated him horribly growing up, and it always made him feel unwanted and put him second to his brother, which was probably the reason he was so insecure when it came to his brother. It all added up, and my uncle also never did anything to make my dad feel better since he lived for being in the limelight and didn't care that his older brother was being mistreated, which made things worse for them as they grew up and led to all the drama. And that's why my mother had to lie to my dad and tell him that she needed the money for my tuition. But since it was a huge amount, he couldn't just give it away without knowing that he'd get it back at some point. So he got it done legally, and my mother was finally able to help my uncle out, and everything was just fine. They sort of forgot about the whole loan altogether once my dad's health worsened, and it only came back to them now that he'd passed away. After he'd succumbed to his disease, his lawyer had clear instructions not to use money from my inheritance to pay off his medical debt, so he collected the money from my mother and used it instead, along with my dad's savings, leaving my inheritance intact. The reason he'd even contacted me instead of my mother was because he'd messed up and thought that I was the primary obligor instead of my mother, and had he not made that mistake, I never would have found out about the loan at all, and this would all be buried like a secret for the rest of my life. After my mother told me everything, I told her that I needed time to think and I couldn't just go back to our normal relationship like nothing had ever happened, and she told me she understood and then left. I knew that this wasn't the reaction she'd hoped for since she looked very upset, but very honestly, I can't imagine myself ever going back to the relationship we had before this because my mother had pretty much been lying to me for almost 6 years. She didn't even tell me that my dad was sick, nor did she tell me when he passed away, so I don't think I can bring myself to trust my mother ever again. She'd used my dad and me, which was just so weird to think about, and even though I still have mixed feelings toward my dad, I can't say that my feelings about my mother are that positive anymore. I just feel like my entire family has let me down in ways that I didn't even know were possible. My mother actually committed forgery to help my uncle out, and while I hate to be the one to say it, I'm not so sure they never had a thing together. I would love to remain deluded and think otherwise, but after today, I just don't think I can go back to that ever again. Not anymore. I'm just so lost and disappointed right now. It feels like I have nobody left anymore. And it's a horrible feeling, but it's okay. I'll get through it. Thank you so much to everyone here who was here for me. Update 3. Hi. I'm back again here after almost 3 months. So, I inherited my dad's old house and a significant amount of money from him, which was nice. Doesn't make up for his absence while I was growing up. But hey, it's still something. My mother and I are no longer on talking terms after I told her that what she did was messed up, and she refused to acknowledge that she'd been in the wrong. So there was no point arguing with her, and it was better for us to go our separate ways since she was pretty adamant that she did the right thing. Whatever floats her boat, I don't care anymore because what she did was something I cannot just forgive and forget. Believe me, I tried, but I just cannot. It's not possible. My uncle's getting married next month, so maybe what I thought about him and my mom wasn't true. But then again, I can never be sure. I was invited, but I'm not attending for obvious reasons. He'd been in on the whole thing, and he had no qualms about it. So that's my family for you guys. It's messed up, but like I said, I'm trying to move past this and let them all go because I still have a whole life ahead of me, and I can't let them hold me back. I'm also getting therapy to help me keep a clear head and not let these things get to me anymore, and I think it does help. It's just been a couple of months, but I feel relatively better. And once again, thanks to everyone here who reached out to me with their kind words. It means the world to me, honestly. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My wife cheated on me with a criminal. He ended up unalive. She's now getting help for things she did wrong. I don't know what I'm doing right now. I don't know if this is the right sub, or even if I should be posting this, but I don't have a clear mind right now, and I'm here to ask for some direction. I've been married to my wife for 12 years. We have an amazing 11-year-old son. Until last night, I thought we had a good marriage. I thought I was always really good to her. We have no money problems. no intimacy problems, and I have never taken her for granted. I honestly wake up every morning and thank God she is my wife. Now I don't know what to think. I got a call from my local PD as I was getting off work yesterday. They asked if I could come to the police station as soon as possible. Panicked. I asked if something had happened to my wife or son, but they said not to worry, just get to the station ASAP. When I got there, they put me in a room with a table and some chairs. They asked me my name, which I gave. Then they started asking all these questions about a guy my wife works with. I haven't seen or spoken to this guy since December 2019 at my wife's company Christmas party. The two officers kept asking me things like, "How long have you known?" and "How did you find out?" The only answer I could give was, "What are you talking about?" After about an hour of this, I just stopped answering their questions and kept asking where my son and wife were, and were they safe. We just kept going around and around until after about 2 hours on and off, because they would periodically leave the room for 15 to 20 minutes, then come back and start it all over again like some cheap cop show. The last time they came in, the cop handed me a tablet and showed me a video of my wife and the guy from her work having sex. I don't remember much right after that. I just remember screaming with my fist, this, over and over again. I had a full-blown panic attack right there in the middle of the police station. The police had a paramedic check me out, and he said my blood pressure was something like 170/110. He wanted me to go to the hospital, but I refused and said I needed to find my wife and my son. After I calmed down, the officers explained that the guy in the video had been having an affair with my wife and apparently several other women. He had been found that morning in his driveway, beaten, raped, and set on fire. He was still alive but in critical condition, and they didn't know if he would make it. His wife had given them permission to go through his phone and computer, and that's where they found the video of my wife. They asked me where I was that morning, and I told them the gym, then work about 10 minutes from my gym. At that point, they said I could go, but that I might not want to stay at my house because they didn't know if his affair with my wife could be why he was attacked. They also said my wife wasn't the only person he was having an affair with. That's when I rushed home. My son was staying with our neighbors, so I got him and went home. We packed some clothes and his laptop for school. I grabbed my gun, and we headed to my parents' house 45 minutes away. I still haven't heard from my wife. Her phone is going straight to voicemail. I've called the officer who gave me his card, and he said she is at the hospital with the guy she's been cheating with. I am sitting here in bed with my son on one side of me and my .38 on the other. My dad is sleeping in his chair in the living room with a shotgun across his lap, and I've not slept in over 30 hours. I don't even know where to start. Anything would be helpful right now, any advice or ideas. I am in a fog. Comment. The sound of KCK. Well, this is pretty wild, but not uncommon. I believe you know the answer to this one, but it just seems so what the hell right now. To break it down, wife cheated on you, guy gets beaten up to an inch of his life, police question you, tell you your wife is having an affair, you blow up, rush, frantically call her / want her to answer, hasn't answered you nor called you at all, is at the hospital with the guy she cheated on you with. What you need to do is, instead of having that .38 in your hand, you need a phone in your hand. Get a divorce lawyer and have these police officers properly document how she's with the guy she cheated on you with, and to get evidence of that sex tape they made. This will be uncontestable evidence that makes sure she won't get jack shit when you divorce. You'll be glad you did this. This will also help with custody arrangements down the line as well. I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but she doesn't love you. Imagine the love of your life in the arms of another man who treated many women like his toys. You heard it firsthand of how many women he EFs over. She was worried about his safety over your own. But I know you're hurting very much. But realize that if this gets really messy divorce-wise, your kid will literally be shattered beyond belief. It's your duty to bring this horrendous shit to a swift end so she can't raise hell back. I hope you'll get a good night's sleep soon, both for you and your kid. It sounds like you're all he has besides your parents. OP. Yeah, my parents are up now, and my mom has been in to check on us. I think what you said is the best plan at this point. I don't even want to know any more than what I found out yesterday. I'm sick and disgusted by this whole situation. 14 years together down the drain, but I got my son out of it, so it was every bit worth it. Comment. Get a lawyer. These cops already like you for a suspect. Practice your right to remain silent. Do not even go into the interview room again. They were trying to walk you into a confession here. Update 1. I attempted to post this on Saturday, December 19th, but it didn't go through, and I got blocked from reposting because I asked a yes/no question. Anyway, here it is again. I am working a bit, so I may not be able to reply that much right now. My original post was removed, but a lot of people messaged me and asked for an update. I thought I would fill everyone in on what has happened this week, because the replies I got helped me so much. I really feel like I owe this community a big thank you for helping me get my head on straight and pointed me in the right direction to get everything done as fast as possible. For those people who said my post was fake, my only reply is, I wish from the bottom of my heart it was. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. For those who said they couldn't find a news story, apparently due to the nature of the attack, a lot of information was withheld. Even our local news outlets only reported it as an assault, and it was nothing more than a blurb on our nightly news. For those who implied or directly stated the police wouldn't do that, you are 100% wrong, because they did. I found out from my lawyer that police can literally do or say anything they want, especially if you aren't under arrest, short of direct threats of harm. That includes lying directly to your face, which they did. It turns out my wife wasn't at the hospital with her lover. When I contacted the detective, she had been admitted to that hospital's psychiatric facility much earlier in the day while he was still in surgery. I don't know why they would lie about that, but they did. Needless to say, the situation has caused me to become very suspicious of law enforcement. After I woke up that afternoon, I contacted my uncle's law partner, who was a family friend. He actually came to my parents' house and sat down with me to go over my options. His entire law firm is now representing me, both in the divorce and criminal defense. That day, Sunday, he got me an emergency custody order and a protective order against my wife for me, my son, and my parents. Our court date is in 60 days. The police served her on Monday as she was leaving the psych hospital. According to her brother, who is a close personal friend of mine, she did not take it well. She is staying with her parents for the time being. I still haven't talked to her, and she hasn't made any attempt to speak to me either. Whether that's due to shame, indifference, or the order of protection, I don't know, but I'm glad of it all the same. My wife is not the person I thought she was, and I'm ashamed of myself for not seeing it sooner. I had to tell my son something, so I decided to tell him the truth, age appropriate. And literally the first words out of his mouth were, "Please don't let mommy take me away." I asked him why he would say that, and from what he tells me, my wife has been treating him very badly when I wasn't around and told him if he told me, she would take him away and my son would never see me again. She has been emotionally torturing our son, and I was too blind to see it. That wrecked me more than the video, to be honest. I told the lawyer about what my son said, and he used my son's statement and her mental state and commitment to get the emergency custody. I have contacted his school for therapy resources, and he will start therapy after the first of the year. I feel like the worst father to ever walk the face of the earth at this point. As for our families, her parents contacted me Tuesday and asked to come see us. I was still at my parents' at the time, and I told them they could come, but she was not allowed anywhere near us. They agreed. They were so apologetic, and her poor mother didn't stop crying the entire time she was with us. Her father was heartbroken and kept referring to my wife as that girl. They both said they felt like something was going on with her, and they did not raise her to be this way. We hugged and cried before they left, and I told them they will always be a part of our lives, no matter what happens with the divorce. After what my son told me, their visit was the hardest part of our whole ordeal. My lawyers have been doing amazing work so far. They found out that the man my wife was sleeping with has a long criminal record. One of the lawyers informed me that when they went to print out the guy's arrest record, the printer ran for 5 minutes straight. From what they could learn, he is currently on parole for drug offenses and has had gang affiliations in the past. He is still alive but in critical condition and still may not make it. The firm has an investigator who contacted the coworker who drove my wife to the hospital. The coworker informed them that my wife's affair was an open secret around the office. My lawyers think that's how the police figured out who I was and who my wife was in the video. There are several photos of last year's Christmas party at her work, and my wife and I are in several of them. That's where I currently am in this whole situation. I am just numb, still lost and heartbroken. How long does the numbness last? And is there any way to get past this emotional lethargy faster? I mean, really numb, like a dream. Everything I've just said has felt like it's happening to someone else. Update 2. Sorry for the novel, but I just needed to vent and get this week off my chest. I will start off again by saying thank you to everyone who replied to both my original post and my update. This sub really did help me so much. If I didn't respond to you directly, I'm sorry, but I got so many messages I can't keep up with them all. First, my son is doing so much better. He started therapy the first week of January, and the difference is already noticeable. I asked him if he felt comfortable with me talking to his therapist, and he said yes, so I've had a few discussions with her. According to the therapist, my STBX would verbally and emotionally abuse our son whenever they were alone together. He was not allowed to make noise or bother her in any way when he was home. She would leave him alone for hours on end, and even overnight if I was out of town. She would then threaten him with being taken away and never seeing me again if he told me or anyone else. The therapist said this has made him feel powerless and dependent in a time in his development that she should actually be feeling empowered and self-reliant. So to that end, I have bought him his own phone and helped him memorize family members' phone numbers and as many addresses as are relevant. I've also been teaching him situational awareness, to pay attention to street names and how to read addresses on buildings. We've also role-played how to ask people for help, how he can clearly explain to strangers that he's in trouble and he doesn't feel safe. I know this may sound silly, but my son can be a bit introverted and shy when he doesn't feel comfortable. Even though we've only been doing this for a few weeks, I can see that it's really building his confidence. Any suggestions on how to continue to build his self-reliance would be really helpful. His safety and well-being is still my #1 concern right now. As for myself, I'm doing as good as can be expected. I started therapy around the same time as my son, and although I don't speak to my therapist as much as he does, it has helped to be able to talk through my thoughts and feelings about everything that has happened to us and our family. The numbness is gone, but it was replaced by a white-hot ball of anger in the pit of my stomach whenever I think of my STBX and what she put our family through. Funny enough, although I hate feeling angry, it's a lot easier to deal with than the numbness. My therapist says this is part of the grieving process, and it's not how we feel but how we channel those emotions that matter. My legal situation, well, I'll be honest, is the scariest thing I've ever dealt with in my life. I was awarded temporary full custody and child support, which I didn't want, but my lawyer pretty much demanded we ask for, as well as a continuation of the order of protection for myself and my son at the request for an order hearing, which neither my wife nor her lawyer showed up to. The judge asked if we would allow supervised visitation, but my son absolutely refused, which was why my lawyer told me to bring him along. The judge asked my son if he would speak to him alone, and he agreed. The judge, stenographer, and a child welfare officer went into chambers with my son and met for about 10 minutes. After their meeting, the judge granted the temp orders and ordered therapy and psychological evaluation for my son. Luckily, the therapist he is seeing is somehow involved with or accredited to work with the court, so he doesn't have to see another therapist. My lawyer said this is a good thing because it means his therapist can give a recommendation for custody, but it still scares the hell out of me that she could get some form of custody after what she put him through. As for the AP, I don't know much. From what my lawyers have gathered, he's alive but still in the hospital. I haven't heard from the police since my initial interview, so nothing new to report there. As for my STBX, I still hadn't seen her since the day I was questioned until Thursday. She has attempted to call me a few times, but I haven't answered, and when she called from another number, I hung up immediately. I have nothing to say to her, and I don't want to hear anything she has to say to me. Her lawyer requested a preliminary hearing for our court-appointed mediation. She was served the second week of January. She was there with her lawyer, and I know this will sound petty, but even with the mask, she looked bad. My STBX was always an attractive and athletic woman. I swear, in our wedding photos she looks like a supermodel. But now, while she's lost so much weight, it's disturbing. She looked sick and frail. She didn't even look at me. She just sat with her face down through most of the meeting. Long story short, everything they asked for was ridiculous. They wanted visitation during the divorce proceedings and shared custody after. They want us to drop the OPs. She wants to cohabitate until the divorce is finalized. I'm not joking. After all this, she wants to live in the same house. It was so insulting that my head throbbed through the whole meeting, but it was all worth it for the big reveal we gave to her lawyer. Her lawyer asked how we should handle discovery for the division of assets, to which my lawyer got this shocked look on his face and said, "What division of assets? Read the prenup." The look on her lawyer's face was priceless. She hadn't told her lawyer about the prenup. My late uncle, who was the founding partner of the law firm I use, wrote that prenup and actually hired her a lawyer to look over it for her before we married. According to my lawyer, it's a thing of beauty because we never mixed finances. Per my uncle's instructions, the house we live in was a gift to me from my uncle before we married. All the utilities and insurances are in my name. All the vehicles are registered in the owner's name only, and we never had to sign for any debt for each other. We have one shared savings account that is used for household maintenance and an emergency fund. It has around $8,000 in it, which she has already drained. There is less than $300 in it now. The prenup states that all marital assets and debt are to be divided 50-50ths. In ownership, all intangible assets and personal debt revert back to the individual who accrued it. The adultery clause simply states that we agreed that if either party is caught or admits to committing adultery, they lose the right to claim any form of spousal support. There's a lot more to it than this, but my lawyer assures me that trying to break this prenup will be damn near impossible because it is the most fair prenup he's ever read. But the last thing her lawyer asked for was what has really messed with me. He asked that we postpone the official mediation for 6 months while my STBX attends an inpatient rehabilitation facility for substance abuse. Some people in both my last posts stated that she might have a substance abuse issue, but I didn't even think about it because I couldn't even fathom that. I talked to my lawyer, and he said that we would discuss it and get back with them about our decision on that. Before we left, my STBX spoke literally for the first time and asked me to read a letter she had written me. My lawyer gave me that, "This could be a snake, so be careful look," and I debated with myself for a moment but decided to take it. When I got home, I read it, and now I wish I hadn't. It started off with all those busted cheater platitudes that everyone warned me about. I love you. I love our family. I know I mistreated son and I hate myself for it. I want us again. But she did explain that after a major surgery she had about 2 years ago, she started abusing her medication. After a while, she started buying them from some of the people she worked with, including AP. He became her go-to guy, and when she ran out of money, she started sleeping with him to make up the difference. She said she hid this from me because she was afraid I would make her stop, and she couldn't feel right without them anymore. That he meant nothing to her but a fix, and she hates herself for doing what she's done both to herself and to us. Now she says she understands how awful what she's done is and wants to get better for our family and asks me to at least give her some time to prove she wants this. Let me state for the record, I will never get back with my wife. Our marriage was over the moment she cheated on me and abused our son. But damn, where the hell was I while all this was going on? I just feel like the most naive, obtuse idiot to ever walk the earth. And furthermore, how should I approach this from here? Am I just throwing her away? Or am I still justified in feeling betrayed? I feel like such a failure as a husband and a father right now. I mean, I feel nothing for her but anger and resentment. But is this how you treat someone fighting the demon she's fighting? I'm just lost and feel so hopeless again. Anyway, any advice would be much appreciated here. Comment 1 Zhao. So I work with addicts every day. Most of them, like your wife, became addicted through medical care. Most of them do not abuse their children. That is unforgivable, and addiction does not explain that. As to the affair, her addiction explains why it occurs, but does not excuse it. Comment 2. What an utterly tragic story in so many directions. That poor kid. Comment 3. I hope he stuck to it and never got back together with her. That poor baby boy. Comment 4. Wait. Why did the cops have a sex video on a tablet ready to show? OP, is that explained later on? Edit. They found it in the guy's electronics and loaded it up to show during questioning. This sounds crazy. Also, anyone reading FFS, ask for a lawyer. Comment 5. Got as far as the lawyer bid and was like, nope. If a law firm is big enough to have both a family law and a criminal law division, they are too big for the entire firm to be representing a family friend for free. I don't care how good of a friend the dude's uncle is. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Wife and I almost divorced before her cancer diagnosis, but my son called me a cheater for getting remarried 3 years after his mother passed away. So I told our son about her affair. Hello. So my family situation is a bit complicated, and I really hope that you guys don't judge me or my ex-wife too soon and keep an open mind. I 42M. Met my late wife, Rita, in college, and we got together shortly after graduation. We were together for almost 2 decades and have a 15-year-old son together as well. But we lost her to ovarian cancer almost 3 years back, and it's complicated because she had been diagnosed almost 2 years before she passed away. At the time, both of us had been considering getting a divorce. Things had just not been going well for a really long time, and neither of us was happy with the other. We would pretend everything was fine for the sake of our son. We just didn't get along well anymore, and it had been that way for almost 4 to 5 years before we finally acknowledged it. One day, she sat me down and she told me that this was not working for her and she was just not happy with the way that she used to be anymore. A lot of things had changed since our initial years of marriage, and I had a good sense of it as well, and even though I wanted to feel bad about it, I just felt relieved. So we came to an agreement that within a few days we would break the news to our son and let him know that we were separating. But we were never able to do that because just 1 week after we had that discussion, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. It had gone undetected for way too long because the symptoms were just not noticeable enough, and unfortunately it was much too late by the time she was diagnosed. Obviously, divorce was off the table as soon as we found out about the cancer because we couldn't deal with all of that at once. She had given me an out, though, by telling me that I was free to leave her if I did not wish to stay and take care of her while she was sick, because she had actually been cheating on me for almost 6 months before she had finally acknowledged that our marriage was not working and told me about her plans of getting a divorce. Even then, she had no intention of telling me about the affair until the divorce was over because she was afraid of how I would react. But after her diagnosis, she said that her conscience wouldn't allow her to let me stay with her in spite of my unhappiness and take care of her both financially and otherwise while she was lying through her teeth to me. I felt kind of sad about it because we had been together for so long, and even then she had had an affair and wasn't even going to tell me about it. But it is very hard to hold against someone who is literally dying. So I put all of that aside because I had made a promise to her in sickness and health, right? And that's why I chose to be there for her. I also didn't think that my son would like it if I chose to leave his mother, and I don't even think that he would understand what was going on since he was just 10 years old at the time. So we hushed up the affair and never spoke about our decision to get divorced again and continued to put up a front for the sake of our son until she passed away 3 years ago. But we told our families about everything, though, since we didn't want any drama later. Exactly that kind of drama that's happening right now. After she passed away, my parents were fine with it, but her family was kind of iffy about our arrangement. However, they couldn't exactly disagree with it. Rita had been very firm about what she wanted. I was there with her until the very end, and I will never regret it. Even though she had cheated on me, even though we had not been happy together for a really long time, she was still a really important part of my life, and I'm glad that I was able to be there for her during her last days. And for the record, she ended the affair soon after the diagnosis and never spoke to him again. Anyway, that was that, and since then I have kept in touch with her family, and her parents and brother occasionally visit to see how my son and I are doing, but it's mostly just been me and him. I know that he misses his mother terribly, and sometimes so do I, but I have made an attempt to move on with my life. I had already kind of fallen out of love with Rita by the time she was diagnosed, and so had she, which is why we were almost heading for divorce. But after she passed away, it just felt wrong to date anybody, so I had made up my mind that I was not going to go out of my way to look for love. But, well, it happens when it happens. About 6 months after she passed away, I met Elle, 40F. We met through work, and there was an instant spark that I'm sure both of us felt, but I never acted on it because I was still a husband in mourning, and I didn't want to do anything inappropriate. She was the one who took the initiative to ask me out, and when that happened, I just couldn't stop myself from saying yes. After almost 1 full year of Rita's passing, I finally had a date again, and I was as happy as could be. I had already had this conversation with Rita before she passed away, and she had told me that she was completely fine with me dating other people after she was gone, and I had no reason to feel guilty. She herself had been cheating on me because she was unhappy in our marriage. At least I was doing the decent thing and looking for love outside of marriage after she was gone. So I knew that I wasn't doing anything wrong by then, and I felt more comfortable with the idea of going out with other people. I also explained my situation to her, and she was very understanding, since we had to keep everything under wraps for a couple of months, because I didn't want her family to lose their minds over our relationship. We went out for almost 6 months without telling anyone. And after that I realized that I really liked her and I wanted to introduce her to my son because I could see her being a part of our family in the future. The first time I introduced her to my son, it didn't go quite as I had expected. He was very cold towards her. It was understandable, since he probably did not expect me to bring home another woman. His mother passed away so quickly. But I knew when the time was right and he was old enough, I would have to come clean to him about the truth because I really liked Elle and I intended on being with her. I didn't give up and tried to get him to thaw a bit so he would end up liking her. He was always really cold but civil whenever she was around, since it wasn't like he was going out of his way to be nasty to her. We decided not to address the issues so soon because things were still delicate at that point. However, recently Elle and I got engaged and I'm planning to get married in the next couple of weeks. It's all happening really fast, but I wanted her to move in with me, and she said that she didn't feel comfortable doing that until she had a ring on her finger because she had had a lot of issues in her last relationship. We have only been together for almost 2 years now, but my parents know about her, as does my son, and I didn't see any reason why we couldn't get married. So I proposed to her just a few days after we had that talk, and she was a bit skeptical at first, but she said yes soon enough. I had managed to get her to agree to move in with me, but the day that I told my son about it, he started throwing a temper tantrum because he thought that it was just too soon. I tried to get him to understand where I was coming from without telling him the truth, but he just called me a cheater, and that's when I realized that I would have to come clean to him. So after he had calmed down a bit, I explained the entire situation with his mother and I, and how our marriage was falling apart and her affair and the agreement that we had decided we would stick to. But now that she was gone and enough time had passed, I wanted a chance to live life on my terms again, but only if he was fine with it. I wasn't sure if he would understand because he was still really young, but even though he seemed kind of confused and lost, he told me that he would be fine if I wanted to build a life with Elle now. So I was really relieved that he had agreed to this, and a few days after we had the discussion, Elle moved in with us. After she moved in, there was no way that I could keep this relationship hidden from Rita's family anymore. My family had known about Elle right from the beginning, but I hadn't told my ex-in-laws because I didn't know how to bring it up with them, and honestly, I didn't even think it was necessary because this was my life now. Anyway, they came over a couple of days after Elle moved in to see how my son was doing, and when they saw Elle, they were very confused. So I had to explain to them how I had been with her for the past 2 years and we were now engaged. And they didn't say anything, but I could see that they were a bit annoyed with me. I don't know why they felt that way, since they had known all about my arrangement with Rita and they had also known that she had had an affair earlier, so I was perfectly well within my rights to try and move on. Anyway, they didn't say anything after I told them about our engagement. They just congratulated me, but their tone gave away everything. After a while, my ex-brother-in-law, Jonathan, 44M, asked me to come out and smoke with him, and I knew that this was just code for he wanted to discuss these things with me in person. But I still went out with him, and once we were outside, he congratulated me yet again and started asking me questions about how long we had been together, when I had met her, and all sorts of other questions to deduce whether there had been any overlap. I was getting pretty annoyed because I didn't think it was appropriate for him to interrogate me like this, but I still put up with it. Eventually, he asked me how my son was taking it, so I told him that initially he was pissed at me and had even called me a cheater, but later on, after I had explained the situation with his mother to him, he seemed to understand where I was coming from and was giving Elle a chance because he wanted me to be happy. So that's something. When I said that, Jonathan did a double take and was all like, "How could you tell your son about something like this when he is still so young and has just lost his mother?" He seemed very shocked that I had told my son the truth and started freaking out at me about how it was just not the right time. He was much too young and the passing of his mother was still too fresh in his head. That was his way of looking at things, but I thought it was the right time to let him know, so I did, and as his father, I don't think that I was answerable to anyone. But I did not want to argue with him. I told him that it would be better for us to go back in, and when we finally did, he whispered something to my in-laws and all of them quickly said goodbye to my son and left. Then about an hour after that, my father-in-law called me up and told me that they were really disappointed that I had chosen to tell my son the truth without even consulting them first. I don't know why they even expected me to talk to them about this and discuss it with them before I did anything, because this was my son, my marriage, and my decision when I wanted to tell my son the truth. My son is 15, and if I think that's old enough for him to understand, I don't think they should have a problem with it. And we got into a really heated argument, after which I hung up on them because I wasn't interested in wasting my time and energy arguing with people who just wouldn't understand. They kept insisting that I was ruining my son's perception of his mother by letting him know these things and said that I needed to do some damage control quickly. I didn't think it was necessary because it was not like my son suddenly hated his mother. He still remembered her fondly, but now things were just a bit more complicated, and that's how life is. I don't think I did anything wrong by telling him the truth, but the more that I argued with them, the angrier they sounded, and by the end of the phone call, Jonathan was threatening to fight me for custody because he did not think I was a good enough father if I was treating my son like this. He believed that I was toying with my son's emotions and telling him things according to my convenience rather than his emotion and maturity. He said that I only told him the truth because I wanted to live with Elle and I couldn't deal with his rejection of my girlfriend, which is why I threw Rita under the bus without even thinking of how it would affect my son. He made me sound like the most selfish person ever, and since then I've been rethinking everything because I don't know if what I did was the right thing or not. So, aita for telling my son that his mother, who passed away 3 years ago, had had an affair while we were married? Edit. So some more about Elle and me, since you guys wanted to know a bit more about our relationship and her in particular. I had mentioned in my original post that she wanted a ring on her finger before she agreed to move in with me, and that's not because she is a gold digger or something like you guys were speculating. I think I had also mentioned that she had had a pretty bad experience in her last relationship, which is why she had said that. So about that, the guy she had dated last kept leading her on and she wasted almost 4 years of her life with him only to eventually find out that he had a whole other family and a wife in another state, which is why he couldn't get married to her. Her ex kept promising her that he would marry her eventually, but that never happened, and their breakup was really hard on her. So she did not date anybody for the next 4 years until she met me. After an experience like that, I think it was pretty obvious that she would want some sort of sign of commitment from my end. She probably didn't want to get led on like the last time, and I won't judge her for that. She accepted all my baggage and issues without question, so I will obviously do the same for her. A lot of people thought it was strange that my son had come to terms with what his mother had done so quickly, so just to clarify, I had informed him about my decision to have Elle move in with us in the morning, and by the time he agreed, it was almost 1:45. I explained everything about my situation with his mother in the morning after his outburst, and then he had the entire day to think about it. I did not bother him at all that day and he was just sitting in his room silently, so I guess he must have done some introspection and come to the conclusion that he was fine with me trying to move on with my life. I did not pressure him in the slightest. I had even told him that I would not feel bad if he needed more time to think about things and I was willing to put all my plans with Elle on hold for his sake. So there was really no pressure, trust me on that. I would never do anything to jeopardize my relationship with my son, and he's just a generally mature kid for his age as well, so I guess that's why he was able to come to that conclusion on the same day, and I'm pretty sure that he wanted me to be happy, so that's why he was willing to give Elle and our relationship a chance. Update 1. Hello, so 5 days have passed since I made my original post, and after I blocked my in-laws, they did not try to contact me. I guess they are getting up to something behind my back, but I couldn't care less about it. I'm just focused on what my son feels right now. After everything that Jonathan and my in-laws had accused me of, I was feeling really weird about everything. Even some people in this sub had left pretty nasty comments, and there were a lot of supportive comments as well, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was probably being selfish. I spoke to Elle about it, and she assured me that she did not think that there was anything selfish about what I was doing. I deserved a chance to be truly happy, and if it meant being with her, then I shouldn't let that go. That made me feel slightly better, but she told me that if I really wanted to take my mind off of these things and get a solid answer, I needed to talk to my son about it and ask him what he felt. I thought that was great advice, so a couple of days ago, I finally sat him down and tried to talk to him because after I had spoken to him about my situation with his mother, we tried to completely brush the thing under the rug and pretended like it never happened because both of us found it very awkward and heartbreaking to talk about now since Rita was gone, and I guess neither of us wanted to ruin the way we thought of her and wanted to look back upon the time that we had shared fondly, which is why we were acting like it wasn't a big deal. But the truth is, it was a massive deal, and that's why we were so nervous to talk about it. But I know that we had to discuss it, and so we did. At first, it was really very superficial, and we tried to convince each other that we were just fine. But eventually, he just broke down. He told me that after that big reveal, he had started looking at things really differently, and mostly he just felt bad that both of us had to sacrifice so much of our happiness to make sure that he didn't feel bad, and he felt responsible for everything. I'm glad I spoke to him because otherwise I never would have found out that he was feeling this way. So I comforted him to the best of my abilities, and I told him that the only thing that made both his mother and me extremely happy was him. Nothing else. It was the one thing that we could agree on, and he had always been the glue that had held our family together, and I couldn't be more thankful to him for it. I tried to explain to him that even though we are grown-ups, we also do make mistakes sometimes and we are not perfect and we try to be, but it's complicated and difficult, and he seemed to understand. He told me that for what it's worth, both of us had always made him feel safe and happy, and he was glad that he was our son. We promised each other that we would never have any secrets again because they just led to more complications, and now that he was old enough and I could tell that he was mature enough to deal with things, I didn't have any reason to hide things from him anyway. But even then, we wanted to work on our relationship, and he's just a young boy, so he's been through a lot so far, and I don't want it to take a toll on him. So we came to the conclusion that it would be better for us to go to therapy both individually and together so we could fix our relationship for the future. I think it'll do us both a world of good, and when I spoke to Elle about it, she was in agreement as well. After the two of us were done talking, we had a family meeting and I told him about how his grandparents, Rita's parents, had reacted to the news of me telling them that he knew everything. I had said that I would not keep any secrets from him, so this was me trying to have an open and honest relationship with my son. And when I told him about it, he said that his grandparents were being ridiculous and so was his uncle because he did not think that I had done anything wrong. He agreed that he might not be an adult, but he was old enough to know these things and try to understand his family, so it was completely fine with him. Of course, what I had said had indeed affected his perception of his mother, but it had not ruined it like they believe it has. He told me that if they visit again and try to turn him against me, he's not going to stand it. And I was really glad to hear that because it just means that in spite of everything, I'm still the person that my son loves and trusts the most, and I intend on living up to his expectations forever. So now that all of this is out in the open, my in-laws and Jonathan can bring it on, and I'm not scared anymore because I have Elle and I have my son's support. That's really all that I need to deal with them. To be honest, the last time that we met, I let them get away with the way they spoke to me and threatened me because I was not sure of myself. But now that's not the case anymore. So yeah, let them bring it on. Update 2. So after almost 2 weeks of having absolutely no contact, my ex-in-laws and Jonathan showed up this morning along with their lawyer, and with them they brought along the paperwork for me to terminate my parental rights. I opened the door, but I did not invite them inside to sit. So Jonathan told me that she had brought along the paperwork, and now they could finally take my son off my hands because I was clearly not interested in being a father anymore, and I was more inclined to frolicking with Elle. I thought it was a very weird thing to say, and I told him to get out almost instantly because I had no intention of dignifying this with an argument. But he refused to leave and started yelling for my son to come downstairs because he knew it was the weekend, so he had no school today. When he started shouting, I absolutely lost it and ended up shoving him really hard. I probably shouldn't have done that, but then he shoved me right back and within seconds we were sprawling. And it was really nasty because 2 grown men doing stupid crap like this, it's just not acceptable. And later on I felt really guilty and stupid that I had done something like this. Eventually, my ex-father-in-law and the lawyer were able to break us apart, and Elle had also heard the shouting, so she rushed inside and held me back after that. By then, even my son had heard the noises, so he had come downstairs and both of us were red in the face, and I kept telling my son to go back to his room and let me deal with this. But when Jonathan told him that he was free to leave now, my son simply stood there and declined as politely as he could. That seemed to shock Jonathan and his parents, and they tried to explain to him that my son really had no reason to continue living with me if he didn't want to. And my son clarified that he knew that he wanted to continue living with me because I was his father, and he didn't think that I had done anything wrong. Then he told his uncle that he really respected the fact that he was looking out for him and really admired how strongly they felt about the situation. But he was fine and he did not need anybody to rescue him. My ex-in-laws tried to argue with him and said he didn't know what he was talking about and he was too young to realize what was good for him. But then my son said that he really didn't care because ultimately I was still his father and he trusted my judgment. That was all that I needed to hear, and I calmed down considerably after that. Once he said that, I told Jonathan that the kid had made his decision, so now he could leave. But Jonathan just stood in the doorway with the lawyer and kept insisting that my son did not know what was right for him until my son got frustrated and told him that he just wanted to be left alone because all they were doing was annoying him, and they did not know him as well as they believed they did. And in fact they didn't even know their daughter as well as they thought they did, let alone him. So now he just wanted them to leave us all to live in peace. And then it was his turn to be yelled at. But that was not going to happen on my watch. As soon as Jonathan started shouting at my son, calling him stupid and ungrateful and whatnot, I shoved him hard yet again, and this time he lost his balance and took a few steps back. So I took the opportunity to slam the door shut and told him he needed to leave or he would be dealing with the cops. He then cursed me out but eventually left, and that was that. After that, I gave my son a huge bear hug and he hugged me right back before he went back to his room. I just hope that Jonathan and my ex-in-laws have learned their lesson now and they know that they cannot brainwash my son to go against me. Update 3. Hello. Quite some time has passed and as of now, Elle and I are married. We got married a couple of years ago in a private and small ceremony in our very own backyard. There were very few people, it was mostly just family and a few of our close friends. My son was my best man, and it just goes to show how much progress we have made as a father and son because just a while ago he and I were fighting because she had to move in with us. Now he was my best man for my wedding to the same woman. We have been in therapy individually and together for the past couple of weeks and have made a lot of progress, so I would like to thank those therapy sessions as well. We have not heard a peep out of Jonathan or his parents ever since the last showdown that we had at my house, and my son put them in their place. My son and I have them blocked everywhere so they can't even reach out to us if they want to, and if they do try to talk to us, I'm just going to file for a restraining order against them because I think we have made it sufficiently clear that we don't want them around anymore. If they can apologize and try to make amends for the way that they behaved with me, then I might even consider it, but for now, it's a no-go for me. But anyway, my family is finally happy, and that's more than I could have asked for. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My late husband had a son he never told me about. Now, my daughter wants to know her brother. My life was turned upside down last month when I was informed of my husband's death in a work-related accident. This would, of course, be hard enough to cope with, but shortly before the funeral, a young man was at my house claiming to be my late husband's son. My husband didn't speak a word about him to me. He claimed to have not known about me or either of my daughters, 12 and 8, until he was notified of my husband's death and found the obituary in the online version of our local paper. The young man was 18 and must have been born before I met my husband. He also claimed his own mother died years ago and was never, to his memory, in a relationship with my husband, so the boy's existence is not proof of infidelity on my husband's part. However, I still feel just as betrayed. My husband never breathed a word of him to me. This boy lives in the UK, where my husband sometimes worked. I live in the US. He traveled a lot in his line of work, and I can't help but wonder, how many other secret children did he have? How many times did my husband visit this boy and never tell me about it? What else was he not telling me? This boy had pictures of himself and my husband at various ages. He says he was brought up at a boarding school, and my husband visited him sometimes. Though I very much want to, I have no reason to doubt his story. The boy asked to come to the funeral. I want to say no, but I feel like I have no right. My kids see me talking to the stranger and poke their heads in to ask what's going on. Before I can stop him, the boy introduces himself to them as their half-brother. Now, not only do I have to figure out how to cope with all this information myself, but I also have to find some way to explain it to my children. My 8-year-old doesn't seem to get the full implications of her father keeping this kind of secret from all of us. But my 12-year-old is clearly upset, although she won't talk about it with me. At the funeral, the boy kind of lurked in the corner, But when lunch was served afterward, he approached both my girls and was playing games like tag with my 8-year-old and some of her friends who joined in. I didn't think this was appropriate, and when I told him so, he apologized and said he did it to raise her spirits and it's what people did for him when his mother died to cheer him up. Something about his answer irked me, and I got the impression he was trying to manipulate me into feeling sorry for him and using my children to do it. My mom and my sister came over to help me after I got the news about my husband. Of course, I talked to them about what was going on, and they were shocked. My mom brought up the point that the boy might be after money. All of our important assets were in both of our names, and I am the only beneficiary of his life insurance policy, but I was not sure what could happen if he tried to sue. I asked the boy frankly if money is what he was after, and he said, "No, I couldn't take any of your money, you have kids to take care of." It irked me the way he said that, as though I was offering money and he was trying to show how good he was by turning it down. It felt as though he expected me to give it to him anyway. I asked the boy what he wanted, and he said he wanted to get to know my children because they're his sisters. In my opinion, they might be his sisters, but he's a stranger to them regardless of biological relation. Apparently, at the funeral, he told my 8-year-old he was going to ask me if he could take my girls to the aquarium, and so they got her hopes up about it before I could even make a decision. I said yes, only if my mom or sister went with him because I wasn't about to let my girls go with a strange man, no matter what. Over the next week, he also took my girls to the park, ice cream place, and the lake with my sister as a chaperone. Every time I agreed to this, and it was helpful because it gave me a chance to break down and cry to my mom without the girls around. When he left and my 8-year-old hugged him and told him not to go, and he said, "I promise I'll come visit again," I stepped in and said, "No, I think it would be best if you didn't come back here." He looked hurt, and my 8-year-old cried, but I was sick of him promising things without getting approval. She thinks it's a cool mystery, like from a TV show, that she has a secret brother, and she doesn't realize how disturbing it is that her father hid his existence. My sister asked me later why I told him not to come back, and I told her I think the whole thing is weird. I don't know this boy or his real intentions. He could be some kind of weirdo trying to get my girls alone. My sister says I judge without ever getting to know him, and he seems like a very sweet young man. He grew up mostly without a family, and he could have been jealous that my girls got all his father's attention, but instead, he wanted to connect with them. My opinion is that even if those are his intentions and he's totally innocent, I still don't want him around my home or my girls. To me, he is just proof that my husband lied to me for years, and it makes me sick to look at him. My girls don't need this drama either, and even my 8-year-old is going to be traumatized once she is old enough to realize how much her dad was hiding. Me or my girls don't owe him anything. My sister says that I don't have to want him in my life, but I don't have the right to deny the girls their brother. She pointed out social workers do everything they can to avoid separating siblings because of the trauma. I said it's not the same thing because my girls have only known this brother for a week. My sister said it's also important because my girl's brother is now the only person they know of their culture. My husband was like 1/8 Hawaiian, the rest white and Asian, and so the girls and their brother are like 1/16. The boy appears to be white and my daughters and I are black, but this boy was raised in the UK, and he isn't part of Hawaiian culture. And honestly, I think culture is something natural and not something to force because of your genetics. My girls don't live in Hawaii. They live in Oregon, so that is their culture, not black culture or Hawaiian culture. I don't force myself or my girls to participate in African culture just because of our genetics. I thought my 8-year-old would get over her brother, and she did go several weeks without asking about him, but yesterday she asked about him again. I feel bad about ever allowing them to go anywhere together and bond. I wish I'd handled the whole thing differently, and now I don't know how to explain the situation to my kids. My 12-year-old hasn't asked about her brother, but she has been extremely closed off since her father's death, and I don't know how this issue might be complicating what she's feeling. I just need outside opinions to know what to do about this. Most comments were calling OP the jerk, or saying she needed to allow her daughters to know their brother. Some people asked OP why she didn't ask for a DNA test, to which she replied, "I thought about maybe asking the boy about a DNA test, but I don't know what it would achieve. I don't want him in my life or my daughter's life either way, and even if the DNA test came back negative, it would only raise more questions, and I don't know if it would open up any legal troubles where now I owe the boy money for my husband's estate if it comes up positive. A few comments suggested that the brother might be lying and scamming OP. I'm going with not the jerk. Call me a skeptic, but get a DNA test first. Something about this entire situation sounds fishy. I wouldn't even have let my kids hang out with him. The way he phrases his answers does sound manipulative. What people did for him when his mom died. He didn't need to convey this information to you during your husband's funeral, but he did. The way he phrases it sounds like he's trying to make you feel bad for trying to establish boundaries. And yes, it sounds like he's trying to guilt trip and gaslight you, making you feel like you're crazy and paranoid. Further, he didn't outright reject your money. He phrased it yet again in a way that he's fishing for a longer haul. He could have easily said, "No, I don't want your money," but instead he said, "No, I couldn't take any of your money." See the difference? And the moment you let him into you and your kids' lives, he has been persistently around. Offering to take your kids out without you or any adults being present indicates a possibility he's manipulating your young child to get what he wants. The appropriate approach would have been to ask if you, as the parent, are fine with him taking your kids out. He has now heavily inserted himself in you and your kids' lives all through your children. You need to start asking questions. Alarm bells are ringing in my head. In response to the comments about it being a scam, she initially makes these edits to her post. While the comments alerting me to how this might be a scam attempt have opened my eyes, I didn't want to introduce the stranger to my kids. But when he showed up to deliver such shocking news, my children came in and asked what was going on. He introduced himself before I could think about how to tell my children. He asked if he could show up to the funeral, and I felt like I couldn't say no to that, but then used it as an in with my children. He offered to them behind my back to take them somewhere, so then I felt like I would be the bad guy if I said no. It rubbed me the wrong way, but I brushed it off. I was in a vulnerable state, not thinking clearly, and he took advantage of that. I should have trusted in my instincts from the beginning. The idea that there could be scammers that prey on grieving families is just horrible, and I had no idea of such a thing. I've contacted a lawyer to figure out how to establish if there is truth to his story and what my legal obligations are to the boy. I'm also going to have a long talk with my sister to see if during their outings he had done any kind of prying that might have led to him learning information about my family that he could use somehow. I'm already in the process of getting therapy for my children and myself. Edit 2. People have been saying a lot of nasty things about me, and I don't think I'm going to get much more productive input out of this. So this is going to be my last post on this topic. I considered taking the post down, but I decided to leave it up so people can be aware that scammers operate like this, that they can be so good at what they do that even hundreds of third-party outsiders will take the scammer's side. In hindsight, I can't believe I didn't see it, and I cannot believe I ever let such a person step foot in my home or even speak to my children. Apparently, the goal was not to ask for money right away. It was to get close to me and my children and ask me for money later for a fake emergency. Other commenters elaborated on how it works. If my daughter asks about her brother again, I'll have to tell her she was tricked. I don't want to do that to her unless I'm completely sure, so I most likely will be asking the boy for a DNA test, birth certificate, etc. However, not until I have the chance to speak to a lawyer. Update 1. May 14, 2022. I was wrong and I was the jerk. My husband's son, I wasn't trying to demean him by calling him the boy. I was avoiding using names, was telling the truth. My husband's name wasn't on his birth certificate, but the DNA test did show he was related to my kids. He also had more photos, cards, and voicemails. Tons of evidence to prove that my husband did keep regular contact with him. Apparently, the son's grandparents were his legal guardians. My husband occasionally gave them cash under the table as child support. I did notice that my husband sometimes made large withdrawals when he went overseas. He said it was because shops there don't take his card. I wanted to believe it was a scam because I thought it made more sense than my husband having lied. Talking to my husband's son a bit more revealed he'd been lying to him too. Apparently, he told him he was a cowboy and a pro football player. Then, when the son Googled him, he switched to saying he was a gangster who had done prison time. Needless to say, none of that is remotely true. I can't fathom what could possess him to behave this way. Lying to me, lying to his kid, not raising his kid. I'm questioning everything husband ever told me and wondering if it was me who died. Would he have abandoned our kids as well? I feel horrible for that boy. I'm in therapy and working on ways to cope and forgive my husband for my own peace of mind. She's helped me work out why I reacted to my husband's son the way I did. I thought he was manipulating me and my kids, but what I actually sensed was that he wanted something from me and my kids. I felt like me and my daughters were not in a place to give anything emotionally or financially, so I recoiled from him, but that doesn't mean he's a threat. My kids went to therapy as well. My 12-year-old has weekly sessions. However, my 8-year-old hated it, so I've pulled her out for now. Many people have shared their own stories of being separated from biorelations and the effect it had on them. I don't understand it because genes don't mean much to me. However, I don't have to understand or respect it. I personally don't feel like I'm in any place to have any kind of relationship with my husband's son, and I don't think he wants one with me. He now appears scared of me, which I do feel bad about. I wasn't trying to hurt him or scare him, but I will allow him to visit sometime if my girls want to see him. My sister agreed to continue to supervise. As far as money goes, the lawyer advised me that there aren't many assets that the son is entitled to because they were in both my and my husband's name, except for a few investment accounts that were only in my husband's name. Thankfully not where the majority of our savings are. I know people think I'm an evil witch for caring about money, but I need it to feed, clothe, and educate my own children. Update 2, June 12, 2023. I don't feel like I really count as a step-parent. I don't know if I'm in the right place for this. When I went to other subs for advice, it felt like an angry mob, and I'm hoping people here might be able to relate to some of the things I'm going through. I didn't know my husband had a son until after I became a widow. His son is 18 and lives in the UK, where my husband regularly visited him without telling me. My husband apparently kept our family, myself and my 2 daughters, 13 and 8, a secret from his son as well. The son found out about us after my husband died and showed up at my door to introduce himself. I didn't handle it well at the time. I was in a fog and not prepared to process anything, let alone the fact that my husband had been hiding a secret of such magnitude from me. I let him get close to my daughters, but when he said he would come back to visit, I reacted negatively and told him not to come back. After talking things through with my mother and sister, I realized that I didn't have the right to keep my daughters from their brother if they wanted a relationship with him. I reached out to the boy to confirm his story and decide on a time to visit. It was supposed to be late next month. My sister was supposed to come out and help and supervise all interaction between my children and their brother because I am not mentally prepared to be around him, and I'm not sure I ever will be. Even though I know my feelings are irrational, I honestly want nothing to do with this boy. I know my husband's behavior is not his fault and that he is a victim too, but even just looking at his face is a reminder that my husband lied to me for our entire relationship. If I had known he had a child, I might have chosen a different life. I got pregnant in college with my oldest. He was older, with a stable job and able to provide for me and my child. He made all these promises. He'd take care of me, he'd take care of our baby, he'd help me get through college. He'd be the good father he never had. And he already had a child he wasn't raising. God, if I'd known that, I might have had an abortion and walked away. I fell in love with him when he said those things, and now I feel like the person I fell in love with never even existed. I don't know if he ever loved me or our kids. I don't know if he was playing a game with us or using us to build an image. I don't know if he was faithful to me on all those overseas trips. I can't trust anything he ever told me anymore. None of this is his son's fault. He's innocent, I know that, but even remembering his existence brings up so many feelings I can't deal with, which is why my sister said she would help supervise. She played chaperone when my husband's son was getting to know my kids. Eventually, she said she'd be willing to do it again. This time we picked a time and she said she'd be there. Today she tells me she can't do it. Her job is understaffed, and she can't get the time off work. My mom can't do it either. She has a surgery coming up and won't be able to travel. My dad will also need to be home to take care of her. I am not going to leave my kids alone with their brother, who is, frankly, still a stranger to me and to them. There might be a 99% chance he has pure intentions, but that 1% chance isn't what I'm willing to take. There are all kinds of stories out there about children being abused by trusted family members. So my only options are to cancel the visit, which my kids, especially my 8-year-old, are looking forward to, and I don't want to take away one of the few things they've been able to feel happy about since my husband died, or be the chaperone myself. This will also mean I need to take time off work. I can manage, but it's not ideal. I just don't think I can do it. I didn't choose to be a stepmother. I'm sure the boy doesn't really want me as one either. I apparently scared him when I told him not to come back. And when we talked on Zoom since then, he acted nervous and flinchy, like he was afraid I was about to hit him or something. I feel bad about that, as it wasn't my intention. I don't think I can do this. I feel like the meeting is a disaster waiting to happen. Like it's only a matter of time before I lose my temper and ruin the meeting that my kids have been looking forward to. I just have this feeling of dread. I don't know if anyone can help. Maybe it's a long shot. I have therapy on Thursday, and I hope it'll help me sort things out. I just feel like I can't do this. It's humiliating to even share this problem with anyone, and even if I try to talk things out with one of the few people I do trust, it's always, think about your kids, think about your husband's son, put yourself in their shoes. People even show more sympathy for my husband than me. Maybe it was a coping mechanism for his childhood trauma. Maybe he had a good reason. I'm just burnt out on putting everyone else first and trying to fill the role of both parents for my kids right now. I feel like it's only so long before I snap, and the rope just got a lot thinner. Edit. Thank you for the kind words and advice. When I posted, I was thrown for a loop and on the verge of a mental breakdown. Having had time to sleep on it, I feel that things are going to turn out okay. I'll look into some of your suggestions, such as professional nanny/babysitting services to go along with them. My sister has also said she may be able to work remotely during those weeks and be able to supervise while the kids hang out in his hotel room, McDonald's, library, or somewhere else while she can work while watching. Not ideal because it means they would have to cancel some planned activities. Canceling or postponing the trip would be a last resort. I won't make any decision rashly. I'm going to take a few days to think about things, talk it out with my therapist on Thursday, and have a definite answer by Monday. It might not be impossible for me to supervise. At first, I panicked because I didn't think I would have to and felt unprepared, but I might be able to psych myself up for it with time. I've been through worse trials than this. Sometimes I just need to remind myself that I'm stronger than I feel. I appreciate the kindness and civility from this community. I wasn't sure if my post belonged here, but you all seem much more understanding than other subs, and I truly appreciate it. Update 3. August 7th, 2022. I don't think I'm going to post in this community anymore as I don't really count as a step-parent, but I got some kind words from people here previously. I just wanted to say thank you all for being kind to me and presenting me with solutions when I was overwhelmed and panicking, and let you all know how the visit went. He stayed for about 1.5 weeks. Before he came over, we talked a few times on Zoom with me, him, and his grandparents. I told him my sister was not going to be able to supervise, and I was frank about how apprehensive I was feeling about being the one to supervise. I don't think he was thrilled about me supervising either. He knew and felt comfortable with my sister, not me, so the feeling was mutual, but we decided to go ahead with the visit anyway. We made a few changes in what they had previously planned when my sister was going to supervise, but not many. We also discussed contingency plans for if something went wrong and one of us needed space. Just knowing that I would have an out if I needed it was a huge relief and helped immensely. Overall, things went relatively well. He and I were civil. I got uncomfortable, but not to the point where I couldn't cope. He and my girls got along well, with the exception of one incident when my girls got into a spat with each other and he tried to intervene, which made them both mad at him, but it was quickly resolved after each girl had their time stewing about it. I will say he was very good with both my girls, but especially my 8-year-old, who has been having a very difficult time lately. Even before her father died, she's been struggling a lot with school and trying to find the right treatment for multiple diagnoses. She's been acting out and been very easily frustrating for a lot of the adults in her life, including me. I admit I love her and I do my best, but she is difficult sometimes. But with her brother, it's like they are kindred spirits or something. He was a real trooper acting out scenes from the movie Encanto with her over and over. I realize it is probably really good for her to have an adult in her life who doesn't want anything from her except to spend time with her. Before the boy left, I gave him a thank you card expressing this to him and that I do genuinely hope he chooses to stay involved. Overall, it was a positive thing. I'm glad we went ahead with the visit, and thank you again to those of you who left supportive comments. It was a much better experience posting here than when I tried to seek advice in other subs. OP hasn't posted again about any issues with her daughter's brother. When I reached out to her for any updates, I got this reply. August 30th, 2023. Thanks for the sympathy. Things are more or less the same, but I'm learning to live with it better and better each day. I got my 9-year-old daughter into equestrian therapy, which she enjoys. We have made a point to not call it therapy, and it is probably good for her, but it hasn't made a noticeable difference in how she seems to be behaving or coping. She's still at her old school, but I have made the decision that if a spot opens in the charter school, she'll definitely be switching. My 14-year-old is bouncing back a little better and enjoying her first year of high school so far. The high school is large with lots of options for extracurriculars and such that are very little cost, which I think is good for her since she was previously involved in a lot and we had to cut back due to financial constraints after my husband died. My husband's son came for another visit last month. It didn't go as well. He brought his girlfriend. She was polite but not very interested in my girls. I think my 9-year-old was a bit jealous that she had to share her brother's attention with a girlfriend and was a bit mopey and prone to many meltdowns during that time, so it wasn't the most fun time ever for anyone, unfortunately. My husband's son and his girlfriend are invited to Thanksgiving at my parents' house. We'll see how that goes. I at least feel more accepting of him being around now. Last year it was hard to even look at him. I know none of this is his fault, but it was hard to see him as his own person and not just a reminder that my husband lied. And this year I felt a little better. I still don't know, and I'm just trying to accept that I never will know why my husband lied to me or how much he lied about. The best I can figure is that it was some kind of coping mechanism that he developed growing up in foster care to keep all his different families separate from each other, if that makes sense. He didn't keep in touch with anyone he grew up with, not former foster family, but also not even friends from back then, nor did he ever even talk about them. He told me very general, vague details about how it was a horrible situation but very few specifics. I always thought it was odd but wanted to respect that his past is painful for him and wished he could tell me more but didn't want to pry. I don't know, and I never will know, but I have a hunch that it all ties together for him, and he just has a compulsion to keep different parts of his life separate. It's the best reason I could come up with after agonizing over it for so long. Anyway, sheesh, that was a long one. If you enjoyed the video and watched till the end, comment Julius Mulius. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My cousin asked me to tattoo him at his wedding last minute, but then I found out he wanted his ex's birthday tattooed. So, a little to my background. I am a tattoo artist. I've done an apprenticeship. The first year of tattooing, I work as a tattoo artist for 4 years now, and I opened a studio recently. My family and I are invited to a wedding that is taking place in another state. My cousin is marrying, and we got the invitation a few months ago. Time has moved forward, and now the wedding is in a week already. Out of the blue, my cousin, let's call him Matt, texted me with something along the lines of, "If you're going to tattoo me on my wedding day?" I was a bit confused, as I never even thought of bringing my equipment since I also didn't plan a guest spot or anything. Guest spot is a tattoo artist working at another studio for a few days or weeks, mostly in a different area to grow the clientele. I jokingly asked if he has a machine, as I still hoped that he wasn't serious. He then just asked if I don't have one and that one machine wouldn't take up that much space to take with. I replied that I didn't plan on bringing my equipment that in fact contains more than just a machine. Color, hygiene stuff, stencil. That's the purple stuff you put on the skin to trace the tattoo with, actual needles, etc. And that I'm not prepared to tattoo at a wedding of which I don't know anything about, layout of the location, is it inside/outside, and so on. He then said that he had planned on this and that it would mean a lot to him to both get a tattoo on his wedding day and that I'd be the one to tattoo him. Remember that this is the first time I'm hearing this. I again tried to explain that I don't feel comfortable with that and that it's quite short notice, as I work until me and my brother fly over to attend the wedding, and a tattoo needs to be designed first, right? He saw my message but didn't reply anymore. This morning my mother called, and she was furious. She asked why I couldn't pull my shit together and just tattoo Matt. I told her what I've previously told Matt as well, but she didn't want to hear it. She just said it would mean a lot to her and Matt's family if I do that and that it could be my wedding gift. Then she hung up. I talked to my brother about it, and he just shrugged it off and said, "It would be nice of you, though. I'm unsure what to do now." As I said, I'm not really comfortable with the whole situation, especially because I've never been guest spotting, so I never had to travel, let alone get on a plane with my equipment. But is that just selfish? I mean, it would mean a lot to apparently everyone, and I'm just saying no. Edit 1. I do have an actual wedding gift already, as they sent out a wish list with their invitations. There was a point that said artwork because they recently moved into a bigger house, and apparently they want random artwork to decorate. I oil painted them a painting I spent several days on, so I also don't plan to give him a voucher as a gift. Point 2. Matt doesn't have any tattoos as far as I know. Point 3. I don't know what my mom's problem is with all of this. I think she just wants to keep the peace. Some comments. OP. I especially don't understand why I should tattoo at a wedding, since you can't or shouldn't combine getting tattooed with drinking alcohol, and knowing Matt, there will be plenty of alcohol at this wedding. Comment 1. Really? And does that mean you can't drink as well? This would be a hard no from me. OP. Yay. I wouldn't be able to drink either, but up until now I haven't even thought of that. Comment 2. It's inappropriate of him to expect you to work for free at an event to which you're a guest. Are you even licensed to tattoo in the other state? The entire thing sounds ludicrous. Tell your cousin your hourly rate, build in the P rate for hauling your equipment, and he needs to cover your flights and hotel. After all, flying in a trained professional to perform a service costs money. Oh, and he needs to pay upfront since this is a special service. OP. I am actually licensed, and I would ask for money, but apparently they plan this as a wedding gift like my mom suggested. I can't imagine what they are even thinking. Comment 3. They plan this as a wedding gift from you? That's pretty presumptuous and against some kind of wedding etiquette. I always thought any mention of gifts by the wedding couple was some kind of faux pas. NTA. OP. Especially since they have an actual list of things they want to be gifted. There was a point that said artwork, but if they wanted me to tattoo Matt as a gift, they could and should have reached out as they sent out their list. Comment 4. And is there a honeymoon happening right after the wedding? If they're going anywhere where swimming is involved, he won't be able to swim with a fresh tattoo. OP. I thought of that too. They are going to Bali. I doubt that he had considered not being able to go swim or being in the sun at all. Comment 5. They're being unreasonable and making things weird for no reason. NTA. And I just wouldn't go if they keep being like this. P. I did think about not attending. It would be sad not to, but this is also very uncomfortable, and I don't think everyone has let go of it by then. Comment 6. NTA. But disclaimer. I'm petty. I would find out who the bride is and tell her this would hijack the wedding. Explain to her or her MOH or mom that you would need several hours to set up, clean, do the actual tattoo, that this would take over her whole wedding. Then sit back and watch the shitfest. OP. I'm actually not sure if the bride is in on this or not. I'm not close with her at all. Comment 7. Does he have any other tattoo so that he understands how long it could end up taking? He could theoretically want anything at this point. This is such a ridiculous request. OP. I don't think he has any tattoos, and with that, no concept on how tattooing actually works. Comment 8. NTA. What is really wrong with your mother? Honestly, while I am not a tattoo artist, I think it's unethical and unprofessional to engage in tattoo services at a wedding or other place other than your studio. If Matt wants to have a tattoo done, tell him to come to your studio and you can do it for him before or after the wedding as a wedding gift, not during the ceremony. Geez, this is so ridiculous. Date 1. So, the last hours have been a lot. First, I called my mom, and wow, she asked me again, this time very friendly, if I want to tattoo Matt at his wedding. And again, I said no with all the reasons I've previously given her, plus some of the very good points you guys had. Before she could say anything else, I added that I felt like she wouldn't take me in tattooing seriously. She didn't say anything for a bit until she tried to explain that she really thought it wasn't a big deal. I told her again that it is and that my mom of all the people should know how my job works. She agreed and apologized profusely. I then asked her if she'd like to attend and watch me work on a client's appointment, and to my surprise, She said yes. Mom is tagging along tomorrow. Now to Matt, or rather his bride. I finally got hold of the bride, let's say her name is Becky, and asked her about the request her fiancé confronted me with. She seemed surprised, as she apparently had heard from my aunt that I made them something for their new house. She assumed it would be a painting since I'm the artist of the family, and it's known that I also paint. I confirmed that, but that Matt had come forward with this out of the blue and that it's not a good idea for many reasons. She agreed with me immediately. I think she does have tattoos. She thanked me for telling her, as no one else did. Becky seemed really mad, but she seemed to pull herself together. I would have lost it. I'm assuming Becky confronted Matt after our call because only 3 to 4 hours later, I checked the family group chat, and there was a message from Becky. There will be no ceremony on the 13th, as Matt and I decided we aren't getting married. Matt and I have things to figure out, so please text or call us tomorrow if you have questions. For the rest of the day, we'll be on flight mode after dinner. Becky called me and apologized for Matt again. She said it was a stupid idea of his and that he just thought it would be cool. She then informed me that she still wants me to fly over for the wedding day, as she will be hosting a party instead of a wedding. Everything is paid for anyways, and she doesn't want anything to go to waste. I asked if they broke up. Not yet, but I'm going to stay at my sister's place until next week. I'm assuming Matt hasn't been too great, but I'm sure I'll hear about it. Apparently my brother and my mom aren't invited, lol. My call must have been the last straw. But as far as I am concerned, Becky is handling it gracefully, and Matt will be okay too, I'm sure. So I'm going to a party, but did I just make a new friend? Thanks, y'all, for having my back. Update 2. Welcome back. I'm finally done writing this. Thanks to everyone coming back and reading this. I appreciate y'all and love that you were enjoying the tea. So, because a lot of you wanted to know how Bring Your Mom to Work Day was, I picked her up in the morning and we headed to the studio. I showed her around, told her a few background stories about some of the artworks and photos that are hanging on our walls, and explained her my routine as I prepared everything. My client arrived, and I handled it like I usually would, just with my mom sitting there, lol. I explained every step of the process, and she also asked me questions about my ink, needles, technique, etc. It was a lot of fun having her around, and she really did surprise me with her openness and interest. When I was done with tattooing, my mother had to leave for work but thanked and hugged me for bringing her along, as she not only enjoyed spending time with me but also loved seeing me doing my job so professionally, and said that she sees my work and efforts now. To the wedding/party. The party started at 1400 hours, as the ceremony was cancelled. I arrived and was immediately welcomed by Becky's sister. She hugged me and helped me with my painting. Everyone was outside drinking and having a small bite already. I went to say hi to Becky, and she hugged me warmly. She seemed tired but otherwise fine. Becky was also smiling a lot, which surprised me. I went to mingle as I didn't want to start off with questioning her, lol. I met a lot of her friends, and apparently most of them weren't too fond of Matt. I heard a few things of how he tried to change Becky to be more like his ex and stuff like that. Not a great look, Matt. Speaking of, not a single friend or relative of Matt was around besides me and one other cousin. Later, as we sat down to eat, I asked if I could join Becky's table. They said yes, so I was sitting with Becky, her sister, and 3 of her friends. I introduced myself to one of them, haven't talked to him before, and Becky added that I'm Matt's cousin, the one who was supposed to tattoo us simultaneously. Who came from everyone, and with that, the conversation was about Matt from the get-go. I asked what happened. The sister just rolled her eyes and was like, "What didn't?" Becky and friends told me a while ago Matt had apparently started to pick on Becky for being herself in various ways. It started small, like asking her to change her sports routine from workouts to only run. Then he criticized her cooking as he prefers to eat more meat and more traditionally. They discussed these topics, and it always seemed fine, but he didn't stop. He asked her if she couldn't let her hair grow or get extensions, and speaking of hair, if she couldn't get them bright. Becky has shoulder-long black hair. More and more seemed to pile up until he also started to make comments along the line of, "Can't you be more like my ex?" As I understand it, he didn't say it specifically, but it was clear he meant it like that. His ex is from Texas. I was shocked. I asked why she didn't break up because of that, but Becky explained that in the situations, it didn't seem as bad as when you list those reasons. She had also made a few changes to make Matt happy but continued to do what she wanted most of the time. Time went on, and the issues resurfaced again and again in different ways. The last big fight was only a few weeks ago when Matt called Becky by his ex's name. They somehow settled this. So, let's skip forward to when I called Becky about the tattoo idea. After our call, she went up to Matt and asked him why he didn't talk to her about it and why he would just decide doing something like that on their wedding day. He explained that he wanted to surprise her and stuff like that. Becky went on telling him this wasn't happening and that she wanted to be able to enjoy the wedding and their honeymoon. Again, they seemed to agree in the end and he apologized. But later this almost threw me as Becky was starting to cook dinner and Matt was sitting at the counter. They talked about tattoos again, apparently a really chill discussion about tattoos in general, and Becky asked him playfully what he intended on getting tattooed. He gestured across his chest and said, "I want my birth date, our wedding date, and your birth date." So, his birth date, June 13th, 2024, and the other birth date. Becky said she went blind for a millisecond. That third date was in fact not her birthday. She asked him again and he repeated the same dates. She then said that this isn't her birth date. He persisted that it was and that she should stop trying to fool him. She said she started to cry and ran to get her purse to show him her driver's license. That's when his face slipped. He tried to get out of it by making excuses that he isn't good with dates, etc. But Becky just went straight to her phone and checked Facebook. She found his ex's profile showing her birthday. It was the date he would have gotten tattooed on his chest if I hadn't said no and also called Becky. My dumbass cousin would have ended up with the birthday of his ex-girlfriend next to his wedding date. Becky said he more or less told him it was over and that this is enough. She started to immediately reorganize the whole wedding and honeymoon while kicking him out of the house. A bit later, she called me back. She also mentioned that she didn't want to say what happened on the phone, as she thought I might tell my family, and she really didn't want to hear about it. Fair, I get that. Becky changed the honeymoon booking and is now taking her best friend. Also, if you're wondering, Becky's dad is currently the owner of their house as they agreed to slowly pay him back. Due to his financial wealth and stability, that made more sense this way. As far as I know, Becky is going to stay there anyways. That's the tea, folks. This was truly a wild ride, and I am pretty sure Becky and I are going to be good friends. We really hit it off. I don't have much dignity left for Matt, so I'm not sure I'll keep the contact at all. Now for some comments. Comment 1. Thanks for the update. What a wild ending. Becky certainly put up with a lot before the tipping point. I was wondering if you know how long Becky and Matt dated before the wedding day? It seems crazy that he would be so sure of the wrong birthday, like, have they celebrated Becky's birthday before? Has he ever said happy birthday to her on the wrong day? Either way, I'm glad it came out and y'all are living your best lives now without Matt's douchiness clouding the way. Comment 2. They have been together for about 3 years, I think. Comment 3. I've got a feeling that Matt isn't over his ex yet. I assume she's the one who left, because if he's the one who left her, he's very dumb. But from what you told us, I wouldn't put this past him. The end of that relationship is a very good thing for Becky and in some way for Matt too. Now he's free to pursue his ex again, lol. Thank you for the update. Glad your relationship with your mom improved and now you can distance yourself from the toxic people in your family. Matt, I'm looking at you. Good luck to your friend. Update 3. Hi everyone. Not sure if anyone still cares, but I thought I'd give a tiny update on how everything went. First of all, since that question came up a few times, I'm a woman. While Becky and her bestie went to Bali as they replanned during her vacation, we texted quite a bit. Then they came back and we were still texting. First, it was all very superficial and polite as she thanked me for telling her about the whole tattoo thing, that I showed up to the party anyways, and that I still gifted her my painting, etc. We got into other stuff like music, movies, and hobbies. We have a lot in common. Turns out she is just as nerdy as me, so we could connect over anime and different games. I never had a female friend to share these interests. She's also coming over for a few days next week. I'm super excited. Anyways, I am super happy how everything went, and to see that Becky is doing very good without my cousin. LOL. I think she's truly relieved and is beautifully blooming. Thanks, guys, for all your messages and comments. I really appreciate it. Some comments. Comment 1. That's great. By the way, have you heard of Matt? Comment 2. Nothing direct. I've talked to his mother though. Apparently he actually did try to reach out to his ex. But I have no idea what's going on there, lol. Becky asked me out. Update for. Hi. I'm very excited. Becky asked me out on a date. It's only in October as she wants to take it slow and needs more time since the wedding isn't that long ago. But she wanted to make her current feelings clear to me. Some comments. Comment 1. OP traded her loser cousin for a new friend. Not a bad trade so far. Comment 2. Honestly, things seem to have turned out well for OP. New friend, her mom understands what she does better, and she didn't have to tattoo her jerk of a relative, lol. Comment 3. I still can't get over the shit bird thinking he's gonna get a chest piece at his wedding and just keep rocking. It's a shitty wound. It oozes and bleeds and hurts. The wrong birthday was just the cherry at top the sundae. Comment 4. Yeah, I've gone to work after a hip and wrist tattoo. While not unbearable, I was able to uncover the hip for periods of time while working due to having a hutch thing on my desk so you can't see below my head. It still wasn't an enjoyable work day. Expecting to dance and honeymoon after a fresh piece. What an idiot. Comment 5. I am very heavily tattooed. I recently got my stomach done. I work from home and for about a week I was taking calls in gym shorts and a button-down shirt with the bottom few buttons undone. This guy is a a-hole even before the whole birthday thing is taken into consideration. Comment 6. It sounds like the cousin was basically using Becky as a placeholder/stand-in for his ex, since he's clearly not over her. Trying to change her to be more like the ex, calling her by the ex's name and then the birthday tattoos. They've been together for 3 years and he's never bothered to learn what her birthday was because he doubled down on swearing that was her birthday. Yeah, he didn't care about Becky. She was just a doll where he exerted his imagery of the ex onto her, because the shittiness of believing that date was her birthday is definitely giving that he was looking at her through tinted glasses and never saw her for her. Glad she got out. Comment 7. People being shocked about the birthday thing after them being together 3 years. My ex asked me to call his solicitor when we divorced and she asked me very baritone to her voice what my date of birth was. After 15 years together, he still couldn't be bothered to remember. So yeah, douches like this really exist. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I called off my engagement when my fiancé secretly used our wedding money to put a down payment on a $100,000 Porsche. Then I found out he had also maxed out our credit cards and lied about it for months. I need some outside perspective on this situation because I'm not sure if I'm overreacting. Background. Jake and I have been together for 5 years, living together for 3 years, and engaged for almost 2 years. We're both finishing up our master's degrees and will be graduating next month. I'm in computer science with a focus on data engineering, and Jake is getting his MBA. Throughout our relationship, we've grown a lot as individuals and as a couple. We've faced challenges together, and I thought we were on the same page about our future plans. When we first got together in undergrad, we were both broke college students surviving on ramen and student loans. Jake came from a middle-class family that helped with some of his expenses, while I was mostly on my own after my parents divorced during my sophomore year. They each had their own financial problems to deal with, so I learned to be independent early on. I worked part-time jobs throughout college and managed to graduate with minimal student loans. Jake wasn't as careful with money back then. He would often blow his monthly allowance from his parents within the first week, then struggle until they sent more or borrow from friends. I didn't think much of it at the time because we were young, and hey, who hasn't made stupid financial decisions in college? When we got engaged after finishing our bachelor's degrees, we decided to combine our finances as preparation for marriage. I took on the role of managing our budget since I'm more detail-oriented and enjoy planning. Jake agreed to this arrangement, saying that numbers weren't his thing despite pursuing an MBA. We've been operating this way for the past 2 years. Our budget is structured as follows. Emergency fund, 6 months of expenses. Retirement accounts, matching our employer contributions. Future house down payment fund. Wedding/honeymoon fund. Current living expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, etc., entertainment fund, health and fitness expenses, transportation costs, personal spending accounts. We each get an equal amount to spend however we want. We also have a joint credit card for shared expenses that we pay off each month. Jake handles the payment of that bill while I manage all the other accounts. I should mention that I received an inheritance from my grandmother last year when she passed away. It's not huge, but it's a decent amount, about $75,000, that I've kept separate from our joint finances. The inheritance is invested for our long-term future, and we agreed not to factor it into our current financial plans. My grandmother was very specific about wanting it to go toward education, a house, or retirement. She was a Depression-era kid who valued financial security above almost everything, and I want to honor her wishes. Jake burns through his personal spending money quickly. He buys every new video game release, subscribes to multiple gaming services, and spends money on in-game purchases. He's really into MMOs, and I've seen him drop $200 in a single night on some virtual currency crap. This has never bothered me because that's what the personal funds are for, so we can each have freedom to spend on things the other might find frivolous without judgment. I should also mention that we've been planning our wedding for next spring. Nothing extravagant, just a nice ceremony at a local botanical garden with about 80 guests, followed by a reception at a restaurant nearby. The whole thing, including a week-long honeymoon in Mexico, would cost around $15,000. We had about $12,000 saved up so far, and we were on track to have the full amount by the end of the year. Last week, I noticed $3,500 missing from our wedding fund. This immediately set off alarm bells because we never touched that account without discussing it first. I checked the transaction history and saw that Jake had transferred the money to his personal account 3 days earlier. I waited until we were both relaxed on Saturday morning and asked Jake about the missing money. We were having coffee on our small balcony. He casually mentioned, as if it were no big deal, that he had put down a deposit on a Porsche Taycan. Not a used one, a brand new one. He even pulled out his phone to show me pictures of his new baby. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision either. He'd been test driving different models for weeks without telling me. I nearly choked on my coffee. A Porsche Taycan starts at around $90,000. Even the most basic model with no extras is way beyond what we can reasonably afford right now. I tried to stay calm and asked why he would make such a large financial decision without discussing it with me first. He got defensive and said he thought I'd be excited for him. When I pointed out that this wasn't aligned with our financial plan, he accused me of trying to control him and not wanting him to have nice things. "It's always about your plans and your goals," he said, glaring at me over his mug. "For once, I want something for myself. Here's the thing. I just accepted a job offer at a tech company with a very competitive salary, $150,000 base plus benefits and stock options. Jake is still interviewing and has turned down a few offers because he didn't think they were good enough. One company offered him $85,000 as a starting salary with a standard benefits package, but he felt it was beneath his skills. Another offered $92,000, but he didn't like the company culture. Based on my salary alone, we could technically afford the monthly payments on the Porsche, but it would significantly impact our ability to save for a house, which has been our top priority. When we first graduated with our bachelor's degrees, we agreed to live frugally for a few years to build a solid financial foundation before upgrading our lifestyle. We both drive reliable but older vehicles that still work fine. Mine is a 2012 Honda Civic with about 120,000 miles on it, and Jake drives a 2011 Toyota Camry that his parents gave him when he started grad school. We had planned to reassess our transportation needs after moving for my new job, as the area has good public transportation options. The original plan was to possibly become a one-car household to save on insurance, maintenance, and parking costs. What bothers me most is that Jake made this decision unilaterally. He took money we had saved together for our wedding and put it towards something only he would enjoy, without even mentioning it to me first. When I tried to discuss this with him, he became defensive and accused me of being unsupportive. "Do you know how hard I've worked? Don't I deserve something nice after all these years of being broke?" he asked. I reminded him that I've worked just as hard, but I'm sticking to our plan. He rolled his eyes and walked away, muttering something about me being a fun killer. The next day, I found some paperwork on his desk that revealed more details about the Porsche purchase. The total price with all the options he selected came to $97,500. The financing terms were ridiculous. A $19,500 down payment, which explained why he needed the $3,500 from our wedding fund. He didn't have enough in his personal account, and a 6-year loan with monthly payments of $1,400 at 5.9% interest. There was also a credit check form, which explained the notification I received from our credit monitoring service about an inquiry. I went to stay with my sister for a few days to clear my head. Jake has been blowing up my phone, alternating between apologizing and accusing me of overreacting. His latest text said that I should be grateful he's not asking me to help pay for the car with my inheritance. As if using the money my grandmother left me for his luxury car was even remotely an option. I've always been the more financially responsible one in our relationship, but this is on another level. Jake and I have had our differences in the past, but we've always been able to work through them. This feels different. I'm questioning whether we have compatible financial values, which is crucial for a marriage to work. My sister thinks I should call off the engagement, saying this is a massive red flag. Some of my friends think I'm making too big a deal out of it and that I should let Jake have his toy if we can afford it. Jake's friends have been texting me too, telling me that I'm being controlling and that a real partner would support his dreams. Am I overreacting here? Is a luxury car purchase right after graduate school a reasonable decision? How do I explain to Jake that this isn't about the car itself, but about making major financial decisions as a team? Has anyone dealt with something similar and managed to work through it? P.S. I just realized I've been rambling, but this has been consuming my thoughts for days now. Thanks for reading this far, and I appreciate any advice you can offer. Update. It's been a month since my original post, and I want to thank everyone who took the time to respond. Your comments helped me gain perspective and validate that I wasn't being unreasonable. A lot has happened since then, and I felt I owed you all an update. After spending 3 days at my sister's place, I returned to our apartment to have a serious conversation with Jake. I had thought long and hard about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to approach the situation. I was determined to remain calm and rational, focusing on the behavior rather than attacking him personally. I started by telling Jake that I loved him and wanted our relationship to work, but that the Porsche situation had revealed some fundamental issues we needed to address. I explained that I wasn't opposed to him having nice things, but I was hurt that he made such a significant financial decision without consulting me first. I reminded him of our agreed-upon goals and asked why he suddenly changed his mind about our priorities. Jake's response caught me off guard. Instead of acknowledging my concerns, he confessed that he had already signed the purchase agreement for the Porsche and put down not just the $3,500 from our wedding fund, but had also taken out a personal loan for another $15,000 as a down payment. The total cost of the car was over $97,000, which would result in a monthly payment of around $1,400 for the next 6 years. When I asked how he planned to make these payments, he shrugged and said, "We'll figure it out. You're making good money now." He then suggested that we could postpone buying a house for a few more years and have a courthouse wedding instead of the celebration we had been planning. "It's not like we need all that fancy stuff anyway," he said, despite knowing that I had been looking forward to our wedding day and had been actively involved in the planning process. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jake had completely disregarded our mutual goals and made assumptions about how my income would be spent. When I pointed this out, he became defensive and claimed that, since we're getting married, what's mine is his anyway. The conversation escalated when he brought up my inheritance again, suggesting that I was being selfish for not using it to support his dreams. I reminded him that we had agreed that the inheritance would remain separate and be used for long-term investments in line with my grandmother's wishes. He scoffed and said that agreement was made before he found his dream car. "Your grandmother would have wanted you to be happy, and supporting your husband would make you happy," he argued, which felt manipulative and disrespectful to both me and my grandmother's memory. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Jake snored beside me, apparently unbothered by the tension between us. The next day, I decided to dig deeper into our finances. I spent a few hours going through all our accounts, credit card statements, and loan documents. What I discovered was alarming. Jake had also maxed out our joint credit card, racking up over $12,000 in debt on gaming equipment, expensive dinners that he never mentioned to me, and what appeared to be gifts for someone named L from several jewelry stores. When I confronted him about these expenses, particularly the jewelry, he claimed they were surprise gifts for me that he was saving for special occasions. However, I've never received any jewelry from him in recent months, which makes his explanation suspicious. Additionally, he had been paying only the minimum amount due on the credit card for the past 5 months without telling me. This was directly contrary to our agreement to pay off the balance in full each month to avoid interest charges. The interest alone was costing us hundreds of dollars, money that could have gone toward our goals. I scheduled a consultation with a financial advisor that my sister recommended. The advisor reviewed our financial situation and was blunt. Proceeding with a marriage to someone with such different financial values and behaviors would likely lead to ongoing conflicts and potential financial ruin. She shared statistics about how financial disagreements are one of the leading causes of divorce and suggested that, at minimum, we should consider premarital financial counseling if I decided to stay in the relationship. After careful consideration, consulting with friends, family, and professionals, I made the difficult decision to end our engagement. It wasn't just about the Porsche or the credit card debt. It was about the pattern of dishonesty and the fundamental mismatch in our financial values. I called off the wedding, notified our venue and vendors, and began separating our finances. Thankfully, most of our deposits were refundable or could be applied to future events. The venue was surprisingly understanding and allowed us to transfer our deposit to my sister, who had been thinking about having her anniversary party there next year. Breaking the news to Jake was one of the hardest things I've ever done. His reaction was a mix of disbelief, anger, and then desperate pleading. He couldn't seem to understand why this was such a deal-breaker for me. "It's just money," he kept saying, which only confirmed that we viewed financial matters very differently. I found an apartment closer to my new job and began moving my things out. Jake initially didn't take me seriously, assuming I was just making a point and would eventually get over it. He continued making plans that included me, telling mutual friends that I was overreacting and would come to my senses soon. When he realized I was actually leaving, he fluctuated between begging me to stay and accusing me of abandoning him when he needed me most. "You're supposed to stand by me through thick and thin," he texted one day, followed by, "You never really loved me if you can walk away over something as trivial as a car," the next. The process of untangling our lives was complicated and emotionally draining. We had to close joint accounts, divide up furniture, and decide who would keep which kitchen appliances. I left behind anything that would remind me too much of our life together, taking only what I needed for my new place. His parents called me after Jake told them what was happening. Surprisingly, they were understanding of my position. His mother even confided that they had been concerned about Jake's spending habits for years but hadn't wanted to interfere in our relationship. "He's always been impulsive with money," she admitted. "We bailed him out several times during college, but we agreed not to do it anymore after he graduated. We thought he had improved." She sounded resigned, as if this was a pattern she had seen play out many times before. What was most revealing was when his father called me separately. He apologized for his son's behavior and shared that Jake had previously maxed out 3 credit cards during his undergraduate years, accumulating over $30,000 in debt that his parents had paid off on the condition that he get financial counseling. Jake had never mentioned this to me, which was yet another deception in our relationship. It's been a challenging few weeks. I had to cancel our wedding, move. There were moments when I questioned my decision, wondering if I was throwing away a 5-year relationship over material concerns. But then I would remember the look on Jake's face when he talked about the Porsche, how he valued his immediate desires over our shared future, how easily he dismissed my concerns, and how he felt entitled to my income and even my inheritance. My sister has been an incredible support system, helping me pack and letting me crash at her place when needed. Jake is now stuck with a Porsche he can't afford, and from what I've heard through mutual friends, he's trying to get out of the contract or find someone to take over the payments. The dealership is apparently not being very accommodating, and he's facing the possibility of significant financial penalties. His parents refused to bail him out, telling him it's time he learned to deal with the consequences of his actions. He's been posting on social media about how materialistic women can't appreciate a man with ambition and style, which would be laughable if it weren't so frustrating. Some of our mutual friends have sided with him, suggesting that I'm throwing away a good relationship over money, but those who know the full story understand that it's about much more than that. As for me, I'm settling into my new apartment and focusing on my career. My financial advisor helped me create a new budget and investment plan for my future, one that doesn't include paying off someone else's impulsive purchases. Thank you, Reddit, for helping me see the situation clearly. Sometimes an outside perspective is exactly what you need to recognize when something isn't right. Your comments gave me the courage to make a difficult decision, and while the path forward isn't always easy, I know it's the right one for me. Edit. Some information I forgot to include in the original post. I realize I left out some important details in my original post that might provide more context for the situation. Jake and I had specifically discussed car purchases about 6 months ago when we were mapping out our 5-year plan. At that time, we agreed that we would both continue driving our current vehicles. Mine is a 2012 Honda Civic. His is a 2011 Toyota Camry, for at least another 2 years after graduation to maximize our savings rate. The plan was to reassess after we had built up our emergency fund and made progress on our house down payment. We had calculated that if we both lived as if we were still students for 2 years after getting our full-time jobs, we could save enough for a 20% down payment on a modest house in our target area, have a meaningful wedding celebration with our loved ones, and still have our emergency fund intact. This wasn't my plan that I forced on Jake. It was something we discussed extensively and mutually agreed upon. Jake had never previously expressed any interest in Porsches or luxury vehicles in general. His sudden fixation on the car came after his college friend purchased a Tesla Model S. I suspect there was an element of competition involved, though Jake would never admit that. This friend is rich and comes from family money, so their financial situations are vastly different from ours. Edit 2. Response to common questions. Many people have asked why I didn't notice the credit card debt sooner. The truth is that I trusted Jake to pay the bill as agreed. The credit card was in both our names, but he managed the particular account because it made sense with how we divided financial responsibilities. He would tell me each month that he had paid it, and I didn't verify because I believed him. It wasn't until I was reviewing all our finances that I logged into the account and saw the actual balance and payment history. Trust is a fundamental part of any relationship, and I never had reason to doubt him before this incident. Regarding the wedding, yes, we lost some deposits that weren't refundable, totaling about $2,200. I consider that money well spent if it saved me from making a much more expensive mistake down the road. Some people have suggested that I should have gone ahead with the wedding given how much we had already invested, but that's a sunk cost fallacy. Moving forward with a marriage I had serious doubts about would have been far more costly in the long run. Several people suggested that I should have tried couples counseling before ending the engagement. I did suggest this to Jake, but he dismissed the idea, saying, "We didn't need some stranger telling us how to handle our business." His unwillingness to even consider counseling was another red flag to me, suggesting that he wasn't interested in addressing the underlying issues in our relationship. For those asking about Jake's reaction to the breakup, he's telling mutual friends that I left him because I care more about money than love. He's conveniently leaving out the part where he made a $97,000 decision without consulting me, took money from our wedding fund, hid credit card debt, and expected me to help pay for his luxury car with my income. It's interesting how he frames financial responsibility as materialism when it suits his narrative. Some have questioned whether I was too controlling with our finances. While I did manage most of our accounts, this was a mutual agreement based on our strengths and preferences. Jake had full access to all financial information, was included in all major decisions until this incident, and had his own spending money that I never questioned or monitored. I don't believe that expecting transparency in mutual decision-making for large purchases is controlling. It's a basic expectation in a partnership. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I rescued my wife from her ex and raised their daughter as my own. But now my stepdaughter is getting married and chose her rich bio dad to walk her down the aisle instead of me. This is about my daughter, Genevieve, Jen, 25F. But I need to explain our family dynamics before getting to the reason behind my making this post. I am 54, got married to my wife, Julie, F49, 20 years ago when I was 34 and she was 29. She was my coworker and I had known her for some time. She is honestly a great person and made sure to talk to everyone on the team, even though she was facing many battles alone. All of us knew she was married, and she had never told us a lot about her husband or her family life, and we never asked her any questions. I think that I should have, because then I could have saved her at least some more years of torture. The reason I got married might not sit right with a lot of you today, but 2 decades ago, I did exactly what any honorable man would have done. The thing is that Julie had been married before. I will not go into the details of everything, but she had been married quite young, and the marriage was a disaster in no uncertain terms. I still remember the day it all happened. She came in to work a little late that day, and I was the first one to meet her. She looked low, and I could tell that she was bruised. She was trying to avoid everyone, but I made sure to talk to her and get her to open up. She finally told me that she had been living in an abusive marriage for a long time. Her husband was a drunk a hole, and he used to abuse her both physically and financially. I felt horrible for her, and I could feel the rage building up inside me. I asked her why she hadn't left her husband. Let's call him Jeff. She said that she had a daughter to raise, and with just her income, there was no way she could give a good life to her daughter. I told her that she could always go for a divorce and he would have to pay child support at the very least, but she said she didn't even have the money for legal fees and she broke down crying. Seeing her cry like this broke something inside me, and that was when I decided that I had to get her out of that rut. Over the next few weeks, we charted out her escape plan, and soon thereafter I proposed to her. I didn't love her when I married her, I admit, and she didn't love me either. We just took the step to make life easier. But it has been by far the best decision of my life, because now, 20 years later, I can't even think of a life without her. I love my wife more than anything else in the world, and I know she feels the same way for me. Her previous marriage is just a bunch of faded memories for all of us now, and I feel honored to have been the man to make her happy again. The only good thing that came out of her first marriage was Jen. Jen isn't my daughter biologically, but I have raised her as my own, and I regard her as my own kid. I have always felt that way, and I still do. Both Julie and I had decided that we would not tell Jen about the kind of person Jeff was. She was 5 when Julie and I got married, so she knew that I wasn't her dad. But she was a kid at that point in time, so it was easier to bond with her. According to the custody agreement, Jeff would get to keep her on the weekends, but after the first couple of months, that stopped. Jen used to ask for him, and we never knew what to say. Julie had to practically beg Jeff to at least come and meet her once a week. It took us a lot of pleading and cajoling to get him to agree. So Jeff used to come on Saturdays, take Jen out for the evening, and drop her back after dinner. It wasn't much, but at least it was something. However, this was short-lived. By the time Jen had turned 6, even this stopped. The payments stopped. Jeff just went completely no contact. It was much later that we found out that he had gotten a girlfriend, and that was his excuse to stop being a father. It was hard to explain his absence to Jen, but she got used to it in some time. By that time, she and I had bonded, and I had wanted nothing more than to be a good parent to her. I went to every school function of hers. I took her friends out for playdates. It might sound boastful, but I was more hands-on than Julie, and this is something that we both laugh about. And I didn't just do it to make it easier for Julie. I did it because I wanted to be a father to Jen. One day, randomly, she started calling me Dad. That was the happiest day of my life, and I felt that I had achieved everything that I wanted from life. The feeling is still unmatched to this day. Jen was and is my daughter in every sense of the word. I have never seen her as a stepdaughter. I was always under the impression that the feeling was mutual, that she saw me as a father and as a parent and not a step-parent, but now I am not so sure about that. Julie and I have a decent life, and we gave a good life to Jen as well. It wasn't extravagant by any means, but we also did not want for things. We went out a few times a month as a family. We went on vacations and did all the stuff a normal middle-class family would do. Julie never complained, and neither did Jen. However, things changed when Jen turned 16. It had been 11 years since Jeff and Julie's divorce, and 10 since he had last seen her. He reached out to me and said that he wanted to apologize to Jen for being a shy father, and he wanted to make things right with her. I was worried about this from the start because Jeff was an abusive, unreliable a-hole, and I did not want my daughter around him. But apparently he had gotten his act together. We told him that we were okay with only supervised visits for a while and then we would see. We took Jen to meet him, and the first meeting went surprisingly well. Jeff was on his best behavior. Jen was surprisingly calm and dealt with the entire situation with a lot of maturity. A little too much maturity for a 16-year-old, if you ask me, but since Jen didn't mind meeting up with Jeff once in a while, we were okay with it too. The issue is that Jeff had made a lot of money by that point. He had invested and traded a lot, so his wealth grew exponentially, and he used to compensate for his decade of absence with gifts and extravagant things that I couldn't afford. It did make me feel bad because I knew I could never give my daughter what Jeff was giving her. But at the end of the day, Jen was happy, and that was what mattered to me. However, we did not realize that somehow all this was influencing Jen poorly. She started showing signs that she preferred her Jeff over me because she valued the materialistic things that she got as gifts more than the everyday life that we shared together. Initially, I let it go because she was a kid, and any kid would love her shiny new toys more than everyday things. What I did not realize, however, was that this was becoming a part of her personality and that this would carry on into adulthood. When she turned 18, she told me that she wanted to be a hairdresser, so I enrolled her in a cosmetology course. She worked really hard and I was very proud of her. She got her degree and started working very soon. Ever since then, she would try to avoid meeting me. I didn't think it was avoidance at first. I just believed her when she said that she was keeping busy, and I respected that. She was starting out her job and the first few months can be rough, so I cut her some slack. I missed her. I missed just the two of us hanging out together, but I did not express it to her because I did not want her to feel guilty. She was her own person and she had every right to live a good life. What else had I worked so hard for? But gradually, it began to dawn on me that she was deliberately creating a distance between us. I tried to reach out a couple of times and even asked her if I had done something wrong, but she never disclosed anything to me. We weren't estranged, but we also weren't very close. I guess that is part of growing up. You drift away from your parents. It just hurt me a lot because she was our only kid, and this treatment was not just restricted to me. She even distanced herself a little from Julie, but she wasn't as worried about it as I was. We did not push because we didn't want her to have any resentment or complaints towards me. She was my only priority, and I was happy with the way my life was. Our duty to our daughter was much more important to us than the void that we felt all this while. I didn't know that she was back in touch with Jeff and was choosing to spend time with him rather than come home. I got to know later that all the time that she couldn't come home, she would be hanging out and chilling with her mother. Well, Jen is 25 now and she got married 2 days ago. In the days leading up to the wedding, a lot of drama happened, and I acted in a way that was very uncharacteristic of me. A few weeks before the wedding is all paid for by Jen and her husband Mark. Jen told me that while I was a very important part of the wedding, she did not want to do the walking down the aisle thing. That hurt me a lot because I had been looking forward to this moment all my life. I had no other children, let alone daughters, so I kind of wanted this. I tried not to react poorly and just asked her why she wanted to remove this from her wedding, and she told me that she felt this was a very patriarchal tradition and she did not believe in it. I told her that I respected her wishes and that I would be there for her in whatever capacity she wanted me to be in. 2 days later, to my absolute horror, I find out that there is in fact going to be a walking down the aisle thing, but not with me, but with her biological father. The guy who abused her mom was walking her down the aisle. I wasn't supposed to find out. It was an accidental slip-up by Mark, but the damage was done. I asked Jen if that was true, but she denied it. I kept pestering her and she finally admitted that yes. She had asked Jeff to walk her down the aisle because he wasn't a middle-class piece of junk like me. I don't think I have ever felt as bad as I did in that moment. The fact that she chose Jeff over me was hurtful, but the reason behind it was something that I think is going to haunt me forever. Mark tried to take the blame on himself because even he realized that she had said a lot. He took me aside and told me that his family was a bunch of prudes, and it was only to assimilate with them that Jen had asked Jeff to walk her down the aisle. But I was done. I thanked Mark for taking her side, but I also told him that I would not be attending the wedding at all. He said that that would hurt Jen a lot because she does love me, but I said that I could not stand to be disrespected by her any longer. I think Mark understood where I was coming from and didn't ask me to budge or change my mind. I think I downed an entire bottle of whiskey that night. I was miserable and don't remember much of what happened. I obviously told Julie everything, but I told her to give me some space and I don't know what she did. I blocked Jen from everywhere and told her that there was no relationship between me and her from now on. I don't know if she responded to that, and I don't even have the heart to unblock and check, because I feel she doesn't love me at all, and it doesn't matter to her that I am not a part of her life. That was the last I spoke to her. She got married yesterday. I didn't attend, obviously, but I got a call from her early in the morning, and she was hysterical. She called from her friend's phone, which is how I could talk to her. She was sobbing continuously on the call, and it took me a long time to even understand what she was saying. She just kept on saying that her mom had told her that even she wasn't going to attend the wedding, and she had never thought it would end up being this bad. I didn't say anything. She said that she had screwed up and she needed me there to salvage the situation. I asked her what had happened, and she told me that Jeff showed up drunk, and by drunk I mean soused, and he was interacting with Mark's parents. Now the issue is that Mark's family is very prim and proper, and they do not appreciate any kind of crass behavior. Apparently that was the reason I was not allowed to walk her down the aisle, because I wasn't sophisticated enough. Anyway, so Jeff came in drunk and caused a huge scene, and it has led to a situation that Mark's parents are saying that they will not be attending the wedding. Jen tried to tell me what exactly he had done in between sobs, but I couldn't understand her, and I was frankly not very interested. She had hurt me beyond repair, and I had to do this. I had to enforce my boundaries. I could not let her step on me. I had done everything that I could for her. I had lived my entire life trying to make hers better, and she only saw me as something to use and feel disgusted and ashamed about. I cannot take it anymore. When I told her that I would not be helping her, she started screaming into the phone, telling me that if I don't save her this time, I am no father of hers. And I just responded that I thought I was no father of yours anyway, given how you have been treating me, and I disconnected the call. She called me again from the same number 15 minutes later, but I did not respond to her. I was crying. I don't remember the last time I had cried so much. I wanted to be there for my girl so much, but she had taken my heart out of my chest and trampled upon it as if it were nothing, and my self-respect did not allow it anymore. But now I am feeling that maybe I was too harsh with her. I should have gone. I don't know what has happened. I haven't reached out to anyone, and Jen hasn't reached out to me either. I think maybe I was in the wrong for abandoning her when she needed me. I am just so confused, and now I don't know what to do and how to set things right. Edit. A lot of people were asking me why I had such beef with Jeff after all these years. Well, if your heart has never been ripped from your chest, spit on, trampled upon, and tossed aside like garbage, you wouldn't know. If you haven't been abused by someone who was meant to keep you safe, you wouldn't know. He is the reason my wife had to endure years and years of abuse. I will hate that guy till the ends of time. I know it has been 10 years now and that it has been a long time, and maybe he has turned over a new leaf, but guess what? I don't care. It is because of Jeff that Julie had to live a miserable life, and no, I will not be the bigger person and forgive him for it, never in a million years. Call me petty, call me crazy, or call me a jerk. It doesn't matter. On the day of the wedding, Jeff arrived drunk out of his mind, and before going to meet Jen, he went and greeted Mark's family. Jen did not know that he had arrived and only got to know about the entire situation when the damage had already been done. In a drunken state, Jeff started flirting with Mark's mom in front of Mark's dad. He was getting touchy with her, and I can't even begin to think how awkward it would have been. It was apparently very embarrassing, and he was practically throwing himself at her. First, everyone tried to ignore it, but then things got out of hand real quick. Mark came over to salvage the situation, and he had to physically pull Jeff out of Mark's dad's coat. He was soused and literally fell into him. He ended up screaming at the top of his lungs and kept on telling Mark to let him go. He was embarrassed too and kept on apologizing, but a huge scene had been created by then. This was when Jen entered. But this was not all. Stuart, Mark's dad, and Jeff then started fighting. As in, Jeff started the fight. He accused Stuart of being a hypocrite and said that if he was allowed to have affairs with other women, he should give his wife the same liberty. Stuart's jaw dropped. He asked him to keep quiet, but he didn't listen, and it ended up being a huge verbal blow between the two of them. From what I heard, and by that I mean what Jeff revealed to the entire wedding party in his drunken stupor, is that Mark's parents don't have the perfect relationship. Stuart keeps cheating on her with multiple women, and she knows all about it but tries to act nonchalant or ignorant because at this point she cannot afford to break up with him. He has given her a life of comfort and luxury, and she cannot trade that at this point in time, which is why she keeps tolerating his infidelity. Whenever some kind of fight breaks out between them, he placates her by giving her gifts and taking her out on trips, but that's about it. I have no idea where Jeff got this information from and whether it is true or not, but safe to say it caused a huge scandal and it was a complete disaster. He went on an entire rampage, beating his chest, grabbing his hair, and the likes. The situation was so bad that had he not stopped, they would have had to call the police. Stuart and Jeff then started a brawl, and he was so drunk that he fell on a few chairs after just one punch and landed right on top of a guest from Mark's side. All this drama is happening at the wedding venue where almost all the guests have arrived. The entire spectacle was seen by everyone. Mark's parents are embarrassed to the core, and they are on the verge of walking out because they could not deal with this humiliation. They had a lot of friends and family who were attending the wedding, and to see all this family nonsense was something they just could not fathom. It was at this point that Genevieve called me and asked me to come and rescue her, and I said no. By the time we had spoken to each other and cut the call, Jeff and Mark's parents had left. Mark ran after them and tried to get them to come back, but to no avail. A few of the guests from Mark's side left as well. They're probably going to go no contact with Jen, and to be honest, I don't really blame them. The wedding was an absolute disaster and Mark is pissed. He hasn't been talking to Genevieve and she is miserable. He told her that she should be grateful that he went ahead with the wedding after her dad created such a scene and embarrassed everyone, especially his parents. Mark has always looked out for me, and I have a sense that he had never wanted Jeff to be there with her instead of me. But all of this is just speculation on my end. I can never know for sure. She sent me an email detailing everything that happened and apologizing for her behavior. But the apology also came with a blame that I should have come when she called me, and that it was my duty as her father to have been there and taken her side and try to bring things back to normalcy. I haven't responded to her, and I don't think I will, even though I have a lot to say, but there's no point in saying anything because I know she isn't going to understand my perspective and my feelings. So it is time for me to protect myself. She has hurt me enough, and now I need to take some space for myself. I am hurt beyond repair. Julie has completely cut off Jen, and she didn't go to the wedding either. Jen sent an email to Julie too, but she hasn't even bothered to read it, and I don't think she will. She has been my rock in all of this, and it's funny because she has lost her child too. I might just end up telling Jen that I need some space and that I will get back in touch with her if I want to. But as of now, that is the most I can do. I don't think I will be updating anymore because I want this chapter of my life to be over. I want to bang my head against the wall and grieve every time I think of what happened to the family and where we went wrong as parents. But I think it is karma that has come to bite her in the ass on the most important day of her life, too. She was worried that Mark's parents would not like us, which is why Jeff was her preferred parent. But at the end of the day, he ended up humiliating her and embarrassed her so much that she can't even look at her in-laws anymore. And it was me that she had to run to help salvage the situation. Update 1. To all those who were hoping for a dramatic update, I am sorry to disappoint you. No jaw-dropping event has happened. A lot of you were hoping and wishing that Mark would leave Genevieve. But that hasn't happened either. They are still very much together. If there are disagreements between them, I do not know and I do not wish to. Those are issues that are between a husband and a wife and should stay that way. I do not mean to intrude in their lives, and I know I am not welcome anyway. And even if I were, I don't want to be a part of Jen's life anymore. I have done my duty to the best of my ability, and now I'm taking a step back. I did not respond to her email. I thought that I would, but I realized that even an attempt to ask her to give me space and respect my boundaries would be met with blame and criticism from her, so it was literally pointless. In other news, I have joined a biker club in my town and we meet once every week for drinks. Julie has picked up a hobby for herself: knitting. Both of us are making a point to go out and enjoy this phase of our lives. I have made a couple of friends there and it feels good to have people to talk to, all younger than me, so they try to keep me aware of the new things that youngsters do. They all use dating apps and I'm the father of the group and I have to give my views on the girls they date. It is quite entertaining. In other news, I am planning to take Julie on a little honeymoon since we never got to have ours. I feel a little nervous, if I'm being honest. I haven't done this ever in my life, but it is also exciting. I have friends, I have a social circle, and I have something to look forward to, and most importantly, I have my wife. I would much rather have my daughter with me and my family back, but I guess we don't always get what we want and I need to make my peace with that. Update 2. She said yes. Haha. Julie and I are finally going to go on our honeymoon. She had tears in her eyes when I told her what I had planned. We are going to be taking a long road trip, an entire month. A full month of both of us on the road enjoying and having fun. We had saved up money for Jen's kids if she ever chose to have any. But with the way we've been treated, especially me, Julie and I have decided to use that money for ourselves instead. There has been no further attempt from Jen to get back in touch with us. I think that's how it is going to be, and if this is the way it will be, I'd much rather use my hard-earned money to make life better and adventurous for my wife and myself. We spent our entire adulthood slaving away to give a good life and a good start to Jen. We have, in my opinion, done what we could. It still pains me to say that Jen has not seen the sacrifices we have made, and if she has, she hasn't been appreciative of them. We did it of our own will, yes, and now of our own will we are choosing to do. Part of me still feels guilty about this decision, but I think I won't regret it in the longer run. We raised our daughter and we tried to do our best. She can do the same with her children if she chooses to have any and live her life the way she wants to. She anyway has a dad to take care of them if and when the need arises, so my services will no longer be required. It hurts, but I'm excited for what the future holds for Julie and me. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Rich family disowned me for marrying my wife, but 1 year later, her business is booming, and now they reach to us for advice because their business is failing and they need help. So, I, 34M, come from a business family. The company was started by my great-grandparents and has been feeding the next generations, meaning us extremely well. It wouldn't be a stretch to say that we've been comfortable and have a good name in the market. My father and my uncle jointly handled the business. Talking about our family dynamics, we have never been very expressive or warm, and I've grown up seeing my parents follow the guidance from my grandparents, no questions asked, and so I did the same as well. I rarely talked about anything at my house besides the common pleasantries and my grades. Even though I never felt a lack of money, I didn't have any long-lasting friends, which kind of worked for me because I worked extremely hard and got into a prestigious business school to take over the company in the future. That's where I first met my wife, Evie, 32F. Evie was the complete opposite of me, present at every event, taking charge. She took notice of me in class and decided to get me out of my shell. She was the only friend I had, and she did help me a lot during uni. I came out a different person after graduation, and I had known all along that she was the one for me. When I asked her out, she said she reciprocated my feelings, and that's how our relationship began. I introduced her to my family, who seemed happy with her until she left. That's when they began gossiping about her, saying that she wasn't from a big business family and didn't match our standards. I was getting angrier with each passing moment and wished to call them out, but decided against it in order to focus on more important stuff. The very next day, I took Evie on her favorite hike and asked her to marry me. She was surprised by it happening all of a sudden, but I assured her I knew she was the one and was sure about it after seeing her with my family. She said yes. To be honest, it was after meeting Evie that I realized how pretentious my family was, and so it wasn't out of the blue that I didn't care about their opinion. I texted everyone in the family group about the engagement. They didn't say much because that was our dynamic, but didn't say anything bad, which was a positive sign. Evie was a new entrepreneur. I won't be revealing what the startup was about to not give away our real identity, but it was something extremely new and uncertain, like Scrub Daddy before Shark Tank. She had been extremely passionate about her business and had saved money working 2 jobs while we were in college to start her business. I offered her some financial help, but she denied it, saying it was her thing and the only help I could give was support. My family, on the other hand, had been bugging me about the wedding and wanted to make it a spectacle for their high-class society. They thought Evie's parents must have been of high standing to be able to send her to my business school, but once they realized that Evie was adopted and came from a very humble background, they quickly backed off and suggested that I convince her to not talk about her parents at the now big reception they were planning to have instead of the wedding. At this point, I didn't really want my family to be a part of the wedding. Now, Evie has been raised by great adoptive parents, and she values family a lot. I didn't want to break her heart by telling her what my family actually wanted for our wedding, so I told her a little white lie that I wanted to have our wedding somewhere alone, much like eloping. She obviously did ask about our friends' and family's involvement, but I somehow convinced her by saying that this was a dream of mine and it was with the permission of my family. She called her parents, who sounded happy and fine with this. So, the next weekend, we went to a city famous for eloping and got married. I called my mom after the wedding to inform her about it, and the news spread like wildfire. None of my family members were impressed by my stunt, but for the sake of their reputation, they acted like it was planned all along. After our honeymoon, Evie went to stay with her parents for a few days, and I went to stay with mine. As expected, I got an earful for marrying without their permission or presence. I usually am the quiet one in the house, but this time I spoke and reminded them how they talked about Evie, taking a stand for her. They must have realized I wasn't as docile as they thought, and getting caught in their hypocrisy shut them up good. They didn't talk about it much after that and quickly shifted focus to the big Christmas celebration they'd be hosting as a replacement for my wedding. I didn't want to be a part of this for-show celebration as well but agreed to it, thinking of the connections Evie could make for the future of her business. My mom, my aunt, uncle's wife, and her son, Frank, 25M, were in charge of planning the whole event. The event was in a month, and I realized it was the right time for me to tell Evie about my family's opinion of her, to make her aware of anything that might come through. I feared that things might go south for us, but to my surprise, she said she had known about it from the moment they met and thought that I would end our relationship after that night. But my proposal made her trust me even more, and she assured me she was ready for whatever was coming. I was happy with this and explained to her how to leverage her position at the party for the future. We didn't realize when a month had passed, and it was time for the big celebration. We went and were welcomed by Frank. We decided to meet my parents, grandparents, and the rest of the family at first, as they were the hosts. They did welcome us, but very coldly. My dad didn't even hug me while congratulating me on the wedding. I looked at Evie, and she gave me a look of assurance that we would get through this. The Christmas party was a partial success because Evie's business was able to catch a few eyes, but a lot of things went unexpectedly bad. After everyone other than the family left, I realized that we hadn't talked to anyone except Frank from the whole family that night. This night was also supposed to be the night the usual talk about handling the business happens, so I presumed that I would finally get some position at the family company. So, when I finally went to my mom to talk to her, she asked me and Evie to sit on the sofa and wait for everyone to come. When my father came, the ambience suddenly turned stressful as he began telling me how my uncle was going to get the charge of the company for the time being because he had new and better ideas to expand the business, whereas I have been too busy with my marriage. I thought it was unfair and tried to explain to them how I have always been there and have been specifically preparing for the role for the last 2 years, to which my dad responded that my seriousness about the job was well reflected when I decided to marry Evie, not caring about their reputation and associating our family name with her and her failing business. Everything was happening all of a sudden, and as angry as I was about them berating Evie like this, I still couldn't get over the thought of not being a part of the family business I had been preparing for since childhood. I wasn't able to gather my thoughts and went out to get some air with my mother following. Evie was still there in front of my dad and confronted him, asking if this is how they treat family. My dad laughed in her face and told her she and her husband may try becoming a part of the family once she is on par with them. Evie was extremely flustered and had no response, so she stormed out as well, taking me with her back to her home. The next day, when I was able to make sense of what had happened, I called my dad again and asked if I could talk to him privately because my intention was not to get a job at this point, but to remind him that no one talks to my wife like he did. He denied it and said everything that was supposed to happen had happened yesterday. I tried calling everyone after that, but only my mom responded and begged me to not escalate this issue anymore. I talked to Evie after this, who was also pretty broken with my family's remarks but suggested that we should move on. I agreed and chose peace instead of petty revenge. I was in a pretty bad state for a few days over losing the thing I had worked for my whole life, after which Evie offered me a high PR position at her company, which I accepted to move on. We did get a few calls from my mother over a few months after this fight to check on us, but it stopped soon, and we were in no contact with our family for almost a year now. My not getting into the family business was a bit suspicious at first for people who knew us, but because my family hadn't disowned me publicly, the rumors stopped over time. During this 1 year, I helped Evie with her connections in the market, and her business started to boom once it found the right pace. With a larger market and the correct connections, her business was growing at a lightning pace, so much so that she was named as one of the rising entrepreneurs by a magazine. This also means that we were doing extremely well financially now, with profits finally coming in good. Because the business was doing good, Evie and I were planning to focus on ourselves and decided to give ourselves a digital detox vacation in the mountains. When we came back and looked at our devices, they were flooded with calls and messages. So both Evie and I decided to get to them. Evie's phone had quite a few missed calls from my mom, a few voicemails, and an email. Evie decided to open the email first instead of calling back, thinking something bad might have gone down. The email mentioned that Mom was missing us and wanted to have lunch with just Evie to catch up. Evie was thrown off by this and decided to call my mom, asking her why she was trying to contact her now after a year of humiliating her. My mom responded that it all had been a mistake and they wished to sort it out. Evie said she'd have to talk to me about it, but Mom asked her to not do that and to meet her first. Evie thought my parents must have realized their mistake and were going to offer me the leading position in the company. And because that position had meant a lot to me in the past, she decided to go and meet my mom. My mom treated Evie with the utmost respect, which was very unusual in comparison to what had happened at the Christmas celebration. Mom asked about me and how I was doing and congratulated Evie on her newfound success. Evie behaved nicely and asked the purpose of the meeting. My mother then told her how my dad and uncle wished to get her input and advice on their business after she had done so well with hers. Evie was shocked to hear that my family was trying to get in touch just to use her skills. She still kept her calm and told my mom that she wasn't going to talk to anyone in my family without me, and that she'd get back to my mom soon and left. Evie and I got into a pretty huge fight that night because of her going behind my back to meet my family, the people who humiliated both her and me. I told her that no wish of mine was more important than her respect, and that there was no way I was going back to them after they decided to cut us off. Evie said she would drop a text to my mom tomorrow that we wanted nothing to do with her or their family. Now, at this point, I should have acted like an adult but decided to take my petty revenge. I told her I wanted my family to feel shameful for how they had treated me. So I asked Evie to text my mom that we were ready to meet them, but only if we got to talk to everyone together. Evie wasn't very happy about it, but decided to stay out of my and my family's dynamic and texted my mom. The next day, we went to our family's home that weekend and were treated like royalty. My dad even called me his golden son for marrying Evie and making her a part of the family. I blatantly asked my dad what he wanted from us after a year of shunning us because we didn't match their financial status. He then began telling us how the business wasn't doing so well because my uncle's plan of starting different ventures had failed and led to major losses. He said he wanted me to take over the company now and with the help of Evie take it back to its glory. I wanted to laugh in his face but composed myself somehow and asked him why he thought we would help him. He wasn't expecting this and fumbled a few things, including, because we were family. I reminded him how he treated me, his own son, and my wife like trash because we didn't fit our family standards. I got up and told him to ask for help from my family once he was at par with us and stormed off with Evie before he could say anything. I asked Evie to block my mom, which she did, and now my mom and everyone else have been blowing up my phone with texts blaming me for making a joke of their financial situation instead of helping them out. Even Evie says that I should have just said no instead of having a laugh at their misery, and now I do think I might have gone a step too far. Date 1. Firstly, thank you to everyone who supported me in the comments and to those as well who called me out on the last incident. I have realized that I was an a-hole for taking the extra effort just to humiliate my family, but after all they had put me and Evie through so much, I couldn't miss the opportunity. I do realize I was wrong, but there is no way I'll be apologizing to them, which some of the very irrational comments mention. Anyway, here's the update on the whole situation. So, since the last time, my dad has fallen ill, which my family is blaming on my ruthless remarks, but it was later revealed it was just the flu he caught during his business trip the previous week to a colder state. I haven't really responded to my mother's calls, but have been enjoying her voicemails where she claims that they never had the intention to shun us out and cared about us even when we were in no contact. I do want to remind her about her care gone missing for that 1 year. But anyway, I do not wish to get into petty arguments anymore. Evie has been a bit stressed about the whole scenario and thinks it is because of her that my family and I are on such bad terms. I keep reassuring her almost daily that it isn't her fault that they are so cold and heartless, and I would choose her over anyone, any day. Over the coming weeks, the calls and texts weren't reducing, with now even my grandparents begging me to come back home and sort things out for good. It's kind of funny how none of them ever visited our house to convince us when they very well knew our address. But anyway, I decided to call Frank and ask him to take control of the situation because he was the only one who was rational enough out of that bunch. I called him, and he apologized to me for whatever I had been going through and told me he would try to ask everyone to not bother me anymore. He added this one thing out of the blue and told me that my dad was planning on kicking me out of the family and company for good because of my attitude problem. I didn't really respond to that and immediately called Evie, who was out for work. I told her that although I had made up my mind to not go back to my family and their toxic ways, it still affected me that they were planning on kicking me out. Evie told me to calm down and wait for her to come back home to discuss this, and that's what I am doing while writing this update. Update 2. So when Evie came home, she sat me down and asked me if I wanted to rebuild a relationship with my family, and even if I did, she would be in full support because she knows the importance of having a family. I answered that although it would feel weird to not actively be a part of my family and their shenanigans, I think I'll be able to fare well on my own without them, and I still have a family to call my own, which was her. She was still willing to help my family, but I strictly asked her not to because I knew they would walk all over her once their purpose was fulfilled, and she'd end up like a doormat. She assured me she wouldn't, and that was that. In the next few days, Evie had gotten a missed call from Frank. She was surprised as to how he must have gotten her number, and unlike the last time, she decided to tell me straight away. We both sat down together and put the call on speakerphone to listen. Frank picked up the call and got straight to the topic. He told Evie that our family business's name had been ruined in the market due to them being unable to make payments on time, and that only she could help bring back the credibility by financially helping them and associating with their company's name. She told him clearly that after what happened when we met, there was no way she was willing to involve herself in all this. Then Frank decided to pull out the big guns and asked my grandfather to talk. Apparently, he was on the conference call all along. He tried to convince Evie at first, but his tone soon changed as he began threatening her to convince me to come back home with her, or we both would not only be kicked out of the business but also the inheritance. I could feel Evie getting uncomfortable and decided to cut the drama right then. I took the phone from her and asked Grandpa to use these threats on someone who was scared, which should have been them because of their deteriorating condition. He started to sob hearing my voice and began apologizing, but I told him it was too late for apologies and that they would face legal action if he ever decided to threaten me or my wife again, and cut the call. Then I quickly brought Evie some water to calm her down. After this call, it was clear that our decision to go no contact was absolutely right, and that's what we're planning to do from now on. Hopefully, my family will get the sign and will stop bothering us, but that seems unlikely. Update 3. I know this update has been long due, and I come bearing good news, but before that, I'd like to mention a concern that was brought to light in the comments of the previous update. A lot of you mentioned that my grandfather's connections, because he was in the business for so long, could have been a threat to me and Evie. But as I mentioned previously, their business was doing extremely badly right now, due to which their credibility has reduced to zero. Someone also mentioned that I should have called him out on social media and let him have a taste of how bullying feels like, but since the last time I humiliated my family, I have decided to not go after them unnecessarily as they're already not doing well and be the bigger person. So I think my warning to my grandfather worked for good because my family had not contacted me since then. It has been a few months now. Also, Evie is pregnant, and we're elated about becoming parents soon. The confrontation with Grandpa actually worked out for good because now Evie could have a stress-free time while carrying our child. We haven't told anyone yet, so I guess this post can act as the announcement. Things have been going fine for a few months now, with the business doing well as well. One of our investors was this businesswoman we met at the Christmas party my family threw. She had always supported Evie and was like a guardian angel to her, so we had a good relationship with her. One day, she came to our office and asked for both Evie and me together because there was something urgent she wanted to inform us of. We met her and got to know something we hadn't seen coming. She told us how my family was doing terribly and no one wanted to engage with them anymore. A lot of speculation about me joining Evie's company instead of my own family's business had also raised a few eyebrows, and people weren't buying their excuses. She told us that they decided to use the next best tool at their disposal: our relationship. She said that they've been going around telling people that Evie was their daughter-in-law and had invested in their venture. They had been able to get a few people on their side by using Evie's name. When they talked to our investor about it, she felt something wasn't right, so she decided to check with us if it was true. Evie couldn't believe their audacity and how they were so blatantly using her name when they were refused that privilege quite a few times. We let our investor know that she was right about them fraudulently using Evie's name and thanked her before leaving. She suggested that we take quick action on it because it wasn't too good for our name to be associated with theirs in case anything goes south. We thought about it for a day and came to the conclusion that it was best if we publicly announced that we had no relationship with them anymore. Evie asked me to email Frank about it once so that they're ready for the big blow. I didn't want to do that, but ultimately complied with my pregnant wife. I told him in the email that I knew how they were using our name without our permission, an action that should be pursued legally, but instead, I was going to spare them their misery and just make an announcement of no association with them. I got a reply from him within just a few minutes, in which he mentioned that I was free to do whatever I wished because there was no way he could convince our parents to not use Evie's name. The next day, I made a huge post on my social media making it very clear on behalf of Evie and me that we weren't associated with my family anymore, and that whoever decided to conduct business with them in our name would be responsible for themselves. We knew this was going to cause a lot of chaos, so we had trained our PR team and managers well to answer questions if directly asked, which didn't include many details about our conflict with our family, as Evie and I decided to not address anything past this. Things did go south as we expected. The post gained a lot of impressions with people asking all sorts of questions and making up stuff. My dad and uncle did try to calm the fire down from their end by making a fake claim that Evie's and my social media were hacked and it was false. But once people got confirmation from our end, my family's business tanked like never before. I wasn't pleased at their downfall, but they had brought this on themselves. The situation was a lot to handle, so I suggested Evie take a few weeks off, to which she agreed and went to stay with her parents. I am glad Evie wasn't taking the heat because after the revelation and incurring a lot of losses, my family decided they had nothing to lose and went crazy after me and her. They decided to share their side of the story in which they claimed that I had abandoned the family after stealing funds from them and used them to start Evie's business. They said they spared me a legal case back then, considering me family, and now were kicking me out of their inheritance. Funnily enough, I didn't have to do anything because one of their investors called their bluff, asking for proof of it all, and they weren't able to provide anything because obviously the incident wasn't true. Things have been quiet after my family's self-sabotaging Facebook post, and Evie will soon be back at work. She was off the grid, so it would be fun to explain to her what went down. I hope this doesn't take a toll on her, and we are finally able to move on and begin fresh. Update for: I am writing this update after a few months, and fortunately, it will be the last. So when I explained to Evie the whole exposing me fiasco, she had a good laugh about it. Although my mother had known someone mutual and got to know about Evie's pregnancy, she tried to talk to us by calling our office number because she's blocked on our personal phones and tried texting and emailing us. But when nothing worked, she showed up at our house at night, uninvited. We let her in, looking at her condition because she was drunk beyond measure. She told us that after our announcement regarding them, the business hit rock bottom, and they had to shut down a lot of it just to pay back debts. That had caused a rift between my dad and my uncle, and now they were living separately with my grandparents shifting to their country home. She kept begging me and Evie to give her another chance to at least be a part of their grandchild's life. She also mentioned that Dad was remorseful about treating us like this too, but she was willing to leave him if it meant we could make her a part of our life. She was clearly too drunk to understand what she was saying, so I reminded her how she was backing my dad and uncle when they were pulling Evie's name through the mud and that she deserved to be with those people again. She did throw a tantrum, but we decided to call an Uber to her new address, which we found in her diary, and wrote a note asking her to not contact us anymore. A few days later, we also got a text from Frank asking if he could get a job at our company because things were rough at home and he wished to learn from Evie. Frank was a good kid, so we decided to ask him to send us his resume on the only condition that our family wouldn't get to know about it. He agreed. About Evie, she is in her 3rd trimester now, and work is taking a toll on her. So we both are suggesting moving to another city for some time to start fresh in the actual sense. We've chosen a city close by to not affect our business, and we'll begin the shifting process soon. Now on to the next story. Story 10. I never thought I'd be writing this. Hell, I never thought I'd be living this nightmare. But here I am, staring at my computer screen at 2 a.m., trying to make sense of how my life fell apart in just a few short weeks. I'm Paul, 42 years old, and until recently, I thought I had it all. A beautiful wife, Anna, 39. A great stepdaughter, Claire, 17. And a successful career as an architect. We lived in a nice suburb of Chicago, had a circle of close friends, and I genuinely believed we were happy. Guess I was living in a fool's paradise. It all started about a month ago. Anna and I had been married for 8 years, and I'd been in Claire's life since she was 9. I always thought we had a good relationship, not perfect, but whose family is. Anna worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep, which meant she traveled a lot. I never minded. I trusted her completely and was proud of her success. Claire and I had our ups and downs, typical teenager stuff, but I loved her like my own daughter. But that day, I was working from home, finishing up some blueprints for a new project. Anna was on one of her business trips, and Claire was at school. I needed to print some documents, but my home office printer was out of ink. I remembered Anna mentioning she had some extra cartridges in her desk drawer, so I went to grab one. As I opened her drawer, I noticed a small, unfamiliar box tucked in the back. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pulled it out. Inside were a bunch of hotel keycards, movie ticket stubs, and small souvenirs. Nothing unusual for someone who travels for work, except these were all from places Anna had never mentioned visiting. There was even a keychain from Las Vegas, a city she claimed to hate. I had a bad feeling, and I told myself I was being paranoid, that there had to be a reasonable explanation, but something didn't feel right. I put everything back exactly as I found it and tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering back to that box. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I started paying more attention to Anna's trips, her phone habits, her explanations of where she'd been. Little inconsistencies that I'd never noticed before suddenly seemed pretty obvious. The way she'd turn her phone face down when I entered the room, how she'd step outside to take certain calls, claiming it was work stuff. I hated myself for it, but I started snooping. I'm not proud of it, but I felt like I was going crazy. One night, while Anna was in the shower, I checked her phone. There were several texts from a contact named Mike from work that seemed oddly personal for a colleague. I didn't have time to read them all, but what I saw broke me. Mike, can't wait to see you next week. I've missed you. Anna, me too. These trips are the highlight of my month. I put the phone down, feeling sick. I wanted to confront her right then, but I knew I needed more evidence. What if I was jumping to conclusions? What if Mike was just a close friend? I needed to be sure before I potentially blew up my marriage. The next day, I did something I'm not proud of. I installed a keylogger on our shared home computer. Anna often used it to check her personal email when she didn't want to bother with her work laptop. It felt like a violation, but I was desperate for answers. A week passed, and Anna left for another business trip. As soon as she was gone, I checked the keylogger data. There were emails going back years to a man named Scott. At first, they seemed innocent enough, discussions about work, industry gossip. But as I read on, the tone changed. They became more intimate, filled with inside jokes and references to times they'd spent together. I dug deeper, checking credit card statements and bank records. I found charges for hotels and restaurants in cities Anna had never mentioned visiting for work. There were even plane tickets to Las Vegas, 3 trips in the past year alone. I felt like I was going to be sick. 8 years of marriage, and God knows how many of those were a lie. I thought about all the times I'd kissed her goodbye at the airport, telling her to have a safe trip. How many of those times was she flying off to meet him? But the betrayal went deeper than just Anna. As I continued to investigate, I found messages between Anna and Claire, my stepdaughter. The girl I'd helped raise for 8 years had known about the affair for at least 2 years. There were texts where Anna was coaching Claire on what to tell me about her trips, asking her to cover for her. Claire had lied to my face, telling me Anna had called when she hadn't, making up stories about her mom's work events. For the next week, I was a wreck. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I'd lie awake at night, replaying every conversation, every interaction, looking for clues I might have missed. How could I have been so blind? During the day, I'd go through the motions at work, but my mind was elsewhere. I'd catch myself staring at photos of us on my desk, wondering if Anna was thinking about Scott when we took them. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal when Anna returned from her trip. I watched her unpack, listened to her stories about boring meetings and networking events, all the while knowing they were lies. Every smile, every kiss felt like a knife in my heart. I wanted to confront her immediately, to scream and yell and demand answers, but I forced myself to wait. I needed to be calm, to have all my facts straight. I couldn't give her any room to deny or deflect. Finally, after 3 agonizing days of pretending, I decided it was time. I waited until Claire was out with friends. I couldn't deal with both of them at once. I sat Anna down in our living room, the same room where we'd spent countless evenings watching movies, talking about our days, planning our future. The irony wasn't lost on me. "We need to talk," I said. Anna looked confused, maybe a little worried. "Is everything okay?" I laughed. "No, everything is not okay. I know about Scott." The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, probably to deny it, but I cut her off. I laid out everything I'd found. The emails, the credit card charges, the trips to Las Vegas. With each piece of evidence, I watched her crumble a little more. When I finished, there was silence. Anna was crying. "I'm so sorry," she finally said. "I never meant for it to go on for so long. I love you, I do. But what?" I snapped. "You love him too? You're confused? Save it, Anna. I don't want to hear your excuses." "How long?" I asked. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated. 5 years, she admitted. But it wasn't always physical. At first, we were just friends. 5 years. More than half of our marriage. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. "And Claire?" I asked. "How long has she known?" Anna looked surprised that I knew about Claire's involvement. 2 years, she said. "She found out by accident. I made her promise not to tell you. I told her I'd end it." "But you didn't," I said flatly. "I tried," she claimed. I didn't believe her. I stood up. I couldn't bear to hear any more excuses. "I want you out of this house," I said. "Go stay with your sister. I'll have divorce papers drawn up." Anna started sobbing harder. "Please, Paul, we can work this out. I'll end it with Scott for good this time. I'll do anything. Please don't throw away 8 years of marriage." I laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "You threw it away. Every time you lied to me, every time you went to see him, you threw it away, not me." She tried to argue more, but I was done listening. I went upstairs and threw some of her clothes into a suitcase. When I came back down, Anna was still on the couch, crying. "Get out," I said, dropping the suitcase at her feet. "Now. I can't even look at you." As soon as the door closed behind her, I broke down. I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a kid. Dealing with Claire was even harder. She came home the next day acting like everything was normal. It made me sick. I waited until after dinner to confront her. "Your mom is staying with your aunt for a while," I said. "I know about Scott, Claire. I know you've been covering for your mom." The look on her face was like a knife to my heart. Shock, fear, guilt. It was all there. She started crying immediately. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "Mom made me promise not to tell. She said she'd end it. She said it would break up our family if you knew." "And you believed her?" I asked. "For 2 years you lied to my face every day?" "I didn't want to lose you," Claire cried. "I was afraid you'd leave if you found out. You're the only dad I've ever really had. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you." I wanted to comfort her. This was the girl I'd helped raise for 8 years. I'd been there for every important moment of her life since she was 9 years old. But every time I looked at her, all I could see was betrayal. "Pack your things," I said. "You're going to stay with your mom at your aunt's place." Claire's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? No. Please don't make me leave." She started crying harder, reaching out to me. I stepped back. "You should have thought of that before lying to me for 2 years. I can't even look at you right now without feeling betrayed. I need you to go." Claire ran upstairs, sobbing. I heard her moving around, packing. When she came back down, her face was red and puffy from crying. "Please," she tried one more time. "I love you, Dad. Please don't do this." Hearing her call me Dad nearly broke me, but I stood my ground. "Go," I said. "Now." The next few days I barely ate, barely slept. I'd wander around the house looking at photos of our family, wondering how it had all gone so wrong. My colleagues noticed something was off, but I brushed off their concerns. How could I explain that my entire life had been a lie, that the woman I loved had been cheating on me for years, that the child I'd raised as my own had betrayed me? A week after kicking Anna and Claire out, I finally broke down and told my best friend, Ryan, everything. He was shocked, angry on my behalf. He offered to let me stay with him for a while to get out of the house, but I declined. Ryan suggested I see a therapist, but I brushed him off. The thought of rehashing everything with a stranger seemed exhausting. Besides, what could they tell me that I didn't already know? That I'd been a fool? That I'd trusted too easily? I was already beating myself up enough without paying someone to tell me the same things. 2 weeks after the confrontation, Anna's lawyer contacted me. They wanted to discuss the division of assets, custody arrangements for Claire. In a moment of anger, I went to the bank and withdrew everything from our joint accounts, about $95,000. I knew it probably wasn't legal, but I wasn't thinking straight. I figured half of it was mine anyway, and Anna owed me for years of lies. I put it all in a new account in just my name. Felt good for a moment to take some control back, but the satisfaction was short-lived. Anna's family started blowing up my phone, saying this wasn't right, that I needed to think this through. Her sister left me a voicemail calling me a heartless bastard for kicking out Claire. Anna's parents, who I thought loved me like a son, were threatening legal action over the money. Some of my friends think I went too far, especially with taking the money and kicking out Claire. They say I'm punishing a kid for an adult's mistake, that I'm letting my anger cloud my judgment. But others think I'm justified, that Anna and Claire betrayed me and now they're facing the consequences. My own family is divided on how to react. My parents are supportive, angry on my behalf for how I've been treated, but my sister thinks I'm being too harsh, especially with Claire. She keeps reminding me that Claire isn't my flesh and blood, that she was put in an impossible position by her mother. I'm trying to focus on the future, but it's hard. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, has been turned upside down. I don't know what to think anymore. It's been a month now since I confronted Anna and started writing this post. Claire has sent me several emails, long emotional pleas for forgiveness. She's begged me to let her come home, promised she'd make it up to me somehow. Reading them breaks my heart all over again. I haven't responded to any of them. I don't know what to say. So here I am, a month into this nightmare, still unsure of what to do next. I never thought I'd be that guy posting on Reddit about my crumbling marriage, but here we are. I guess I'm looking for advice, or maybe just validation that I'm not crazy for feeling this way. How do you move on when your entire life has been a lie? Update 1. It's been 2 months since my last post, and a lot has happened. I'm not sure if things are better or worse, but they're definitely different. First, the legal battles. Anna's lawyer came at me hard about the money I took from our joint account. They threatened to take me to court for financial misconduct if I didn't return at least half of what I'd withdrawn. After talking it over with my own lawyer, yeah, I finally got one. I agreed to transfer half the money back. It felt like admitting defeat, but my lawyer assured me it was the smart move in the long run. The house is another point of problem. Anna wants to sell it and split the proceeds, but I'm not ready to let go. This is the home we built together, literally. I designed it myself. The thought of strangers living here makes me sick. But I also can't afford to buy her out on my own. We're at a stalemate for now. As for Claire, that situation has gotten more complicated. About a month ago, she showed up at the house unannounced. I was working in the home office when I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, there she was, looking small and scared, with a backpack over her shoulder. "I'm sorry," she said before I could speak. "I know you probably don't want to see me, but I didn't know where else to go. I should have sent her away. I wanted to, but seeing her standing there looking so lost, I couldn't do it. I let her in. Turns out she'd had a huge fight with Anna. Claire had finally confronted her mother about the affair, about making her lie to me for years. Anna had apparently tried to justify her actions, saying that Claire couldn't understand adult relationships. This had led to a screaming match, with Claire accusing Anna of ruining their family. In the heat of the moment, Claire had packed a bag and left, and finally ended up at my place. "Can I stay here?" Claire asked. "Just for a few days? I'll find somewhere else to go, I promise." I sighed. "Claire, it's not that simple. You're still a minor. Legally, I can't just let you stay here without your mother's permission." Her face fell. "Please, I can't go back there. I can't face her right now." Against my better judgment, I agreed to let her stay the night. I told her we'd figure things out in the morning. I made up the guest room for her, the same room she'd slept in when she first came to live with us 8 years ago. That night, I heard muffled sobs coming from Claire's room. The next morning, I called Anna to let her know Claire was with me. To say she was upset would be an understatement. She accused me of turning Claire against her, of manipulating the situation. I let her rant, too tired to argue. "She can stay here for now," I said when Anna finally paused for breath. "But we need to figure out a long-term solution. This isn't healthy for any of us." Anna reluctantly agreed, probably realizing she didn't have much choice. Claire was almost 18, and forcing her to come home would likely just push her further away. So now, 2 months after I thought I'd cut all ties with my old life, I find myself living with my stepdaughter again. It's complicated. There are moments when it feels almost normal, like when we're eating dinner together or when I help her with her homework. But then I'll remember everything that's happened, and the anger and hurt come rushing back. Claire's trying, I'll give her that. She's been going to therapy, something I still can't bring myself to do, and she's made multiple attempts to apologize and explain her actions. She's told me how guilty she felt lying to me, how she convinced herself it was the right thing to do to keep our family together. "I thought if I just kept quiet, Mom would end it like she promised," she told me one night. "I was stupid. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I want to forgive her, I really do. But every time I start to let my guard down, I remember those 2 years of lies, and I pull back." As for Anna, we're still barely speaking. Our communication is limited to emails about financial matters and Claire's well-being. She's made a few attempts to apologize, to explain herself, but I'm not ready to hear it. I did learn through Claire that Anna has ended things with Scott for good. Apparently, he wasn't too keen on the idea of being with Anna full-time, of dealing with all the mess their affair had created. Part of me felt a twisted satisfaction at that. Let her feel a fraction of the rejection and betrayal I've experienced. My friends and family are still divided on how to handle the situation. Some think I'm being too soft by letting Claire stay with me. Others praise me for stepping up and being there for her despite everything. I'm not sure which group is right. I still have days where the anger threatens to overwhelm me, days where I want to sell the house, change my number, and disappear to start a new life somewhere else. But then I look at Claire, see the fear in her eyes when she thinks I might kick her out again, and I know I can't do it. For better or worse, She's still my family, even if she is not my blood. So that's where things stand now. The divorce proceedings are moving forward, slowly but surely. I'll update if anything happens. Edit to add. After posting the last update, I received a flood of comments and messages. While many were supportive, a significant number questioned my decision to let Claire back into my life. To those asking why I took Claire back, I understand your concerns. Believe me, I've asked myself the same questions countless times. The decision to let Claire stay wasn't easy, and it wasn't made lightly. Yes, she lied to me for 2 years. Yes, she betrayed my trust. And no, she's not my biological daughter. But family isn't always about blood. For 8 years, I was the only father Claire knew. I was there for her first day of high school, taught her to drive, helped with college applications. I celebrated her successes and comforted her through heartbreaks. Those 8 years of love and memories don't just disappear because of 2 years of lies. Claire was a child put in an impossible situation by her mother. She made the wrong choice, absolutely, but she's showing genuine remorse and actively working to make amends. She's in therapy, confronting her actions and their consequences. Am I still hurt? Absolutely. Do I still have moments of anger and resentment? Of course. But I'm trying to separate my feelings about Anna's betrayal from my relationship with Claire. I'm not saying I've forgiven her completely. Trust is still an issue, and we have a long way to go. But I'm giving her a chance to prove herself, to show that she's learned from her mistakes. Maybe I am being too soft. Maybe this will blow up in my face. But I have to follow my heart on this one. Claire needs support right now, and despite everything, I still love her like a daughter. I appreciate everyone's concern and advice. This isn't an easy situation, and there's no clear right or wrong answer. I'm just trying to navigate it the best I can, one day at a time. Update 2. It's been 6 months since my last update, and once again, a lot has changed. Some for the better, some, well, I'm not sure yet. First, the divorce is final. After months of negotiations, arguments, and compromises, Anna and I are officially no longer married. The house ended up being sold. Neither of us could afford to buy the other out, and living there had become too painful anyway. Every room held memories, both good and bad. It was time to let it go. We split the proceeds, which gave me enough to put a down payment on a smaller place closer to my office. Claire turned 18 2 months ago. We had a small celebration, just the two of us and a cake I picked up from the local bakery. Felt bittersweet. I was proud of the young woman she's becoming, but I couldn't help thinking about all the family birthdays we'd had in the past, before everything fell apart. Our relationship has improved, slowly but surely. The therapy she's been going to seems to be helping. She's more open now, more willing to talk about her feelings and take responsibility for her actions. We've had some hard conversations, but also talking about the good times we shared as a family. One night, after a particularly emotional therapy session, Claire came to me with tears in her eyes. "I know I've said it before," she said, "but I'm so sorry for everything. I was young and scared, but that's no excuse. You deserved better. I just hope that someday you can forgive me." I hugged her, for the first time in months. "I'm working on it," I told her, and I meant it. Claire's relationship with Anna is still strained. They're talking, but it's clear that the trust between them has been severely damaged. Claire's been spending most of her time with me, only visiting Anna on occasional weekends. As for Anna, well, that's where things get complicated. About a month ago, she reached out asking if we could meet to talk. My first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity got the better of me. Seeing her again was harder than I expected. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness," she said after we'd sat in awkward silence for several minutes. "What I did was unforgivable. But I want you to know how sorry I am, not just for the affair, but for all the lies, for involving Claire, for throwing away everything we had." She went on to explain that she'd been in intensive therapy since our split. She'd been diagnosed with depression and was now on medication. She talked about how she'd been struggling with feelings of inadequacy and a fear of commitment long before she met Scott. How the affair had been a way of sabotaging her own happiness because she didn't feel she deserved it. "None of this is an excuse," she said, wiping away tears. I know that. I'm just trying to understand why I did what I did, so I never make the same mistakes again. What do you want from me, Anna? I asked when she'd finished. Why are you telling me all this now? She took a deep breath. I don't expect anything from you, Paul. I know I've lost any right to ask for your trust or forgiveness. I needed you to know that I understand the magnitude of what I've done, and I wanted to thank you for being there for Claire. She tells me how much you've helped her through all of this, even though you had every right to turn your back on her. We talked for a while longer about Claire, about the divorce, about our separate lives now. It was the longest conversation we'd had in months that didn't involve lawyers or financial negotiations. When we finally parted ways, I felt, I'm not sure, not better exactly, but different, like something had shifted. Claire was curious about my meeting with Anna. When I told her about it, she seemed relieved. I'm glad Mom's getting help, she said. Maybe someday we can all be in the same room without it being awkward and painful. I'm not sure if that's possible, but I appreciate Claire's optimism. As for me, I finally started seeing a therapist of my own. It took a lot of convincing from Claire and my friends, but I realized I needed to deal with my own issues if I ever wanted to move forward. It's been hard, dredging up all the pain and anger I've been trying to suppress, but it's also been cathartic. My therapist has helped me see patterns in my own behavior, how I tend to avoid conflict, how I sometimes prioritize others' happiness over my own, how I struggle to express my own needs and emotions. I've also started dating again, tentatively. Nothing serious yet, just a few casual dinners with women I've met through friends or work. It feels strange being single again at 42. I'm rusty, awkward, still carrying a lot of baggage from my marriage. But it's nice to be reminded that there might be a future for me that doesn't revolve around Anna's betrayal. Claire has been supportive of my dating efforts, even offering to help me set up an online dating profile. I declined. I'm not quite ready for that level of putting myself out there, but I appreciate her enthusiasm. You deserve to be happy, Dad, she told me. She's taken to calling me that again, and I find I don't mind it as much as I used to. So that's where things stand now, 6 months later. The dust has settled somewhat. The acute pain of betrayal has faded to a dull ache. I'm not happy, not yet, but I'm okay, taking it one day at a time. But for the first time in a long time, I'm starting to believe that there might be a future worth looking forward to. And for now, that's enough. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Adopted a boy we found on the highway, raised him for 19 years. Then he uninvited us from his wedding. I know the title is a bit weird, but this was the best way I found to translate what was said. Obligatory apologies for bad grammar and/or spelling. English is not my first language. I'm M44. My husband is M40. Been married for 20 years, together for 22, and our adopted son is M24. He's black and we're not. I'm only mentioning this because it's relevant to the story later. This does not take place in the US. Let me give a little bit of background to the situation. About 19 years ago, my husband and I had been driving on a highway back from a small vacation, when, along a particularly long stretch of road, absolutely no buildings around, only a ton of grass and hills as far as the eye could see, we spotted a little boy just sitting by the side of the road. Like I mentioned, there was nothing around for miles and no cars close to where the boy was, so we decided to stop and see if everything was okay. When we got closer to the boy, let's call him Jason, fake name, it was very easy to see he was dirty and malnourished. Since the only thing he had on were some diapers, he was so small it didn't look like he could be older than 3. Later found out he was actually 5. We asked him why he was alone, and he told us that Mommy and Daddy put him here and told him to wait. There was no cell signal in the area, so we did the sensible thing and brought him back to town to the nearest police station. To make a long story short, CPS was called. We discovered his parents were some druggies that were on the run from a felony. The only other relative Jason had was his grandmother, who was very mentally ill and couldn't take care of him. We felt bad he went into foster care soon after, but we felt bad for the kid and kept in touch with his caseworker. I had, still do, an extremely well-paying job at the time and could easily afford a decent lifestyle for a small family. So, after a few months of discussions between ourselves, the caseworker, and some bureaucracy, we formally adopted Jason. Now on to the situation. About 3 years ago, Jason's parents were released from prison on parole. They contacted him not long after in hopes of reconnecting. Prior to that, they'd sent him a few odd letters here or there, but nothing really substantial. At first, he was hesitant to talk to them, but ended up caving and meeting them for lunch one day. I'll admit that a part of me was a bit jealous and apprehensive of what could happen, but I could see that it really was something that my son wanted to do, so for his sake, I swallowed those and supported him through it. It wasn't very long, about 3 months I think, that he started to pull away from us. At first, I chalked it up to him being excited to actually talk to his bio parents after so long, talk about what had been going on in his life, spend some time with them, etc. It started to bother me when he'd cancel plans with us last minute, because Mom had an emergency, or Dad really needs me to help him with something today, or whatever other excuse he could come up with. He used to come over to our house at least once a week, call every day or so, but now we were lucky if he even came by that month. Again, I thought that was just temporary, that he was just excited and soon enough he'd start spending some time with us again. We were overjoyed when he invited us over to dinner one night. It was supposed to be a family gathering. Us and his bio parents and his wife, girlfriend at the time. I wasn't exactly keen on meeting the people that had left my son for dead on the side of the road, but decided to give them the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe they'd atoned and changed. Besides, he's our son, and we love him. We had to at least try. To say the dinner was a disaster is an understatement. His bio mom was extremely rude to my husband and me the entire night, making passive-aggressive homophobic and racist remarks every chance she got. His father was much the same. It all came to a head when she straight up called us the F word and threw a glass at my husband. A screaming match followed, and we left soon after. The next day, Jason apologized profusely and promised they'd never do something like that again. I told him neither my husband nor I wanted to have anything to do with them and would appreciate if he understood that. He seemed to, but continued to pull away the next few months, and that leads to what happened last week. Jason proposed to his girlfriend about 9 months back and has been preparing for the wedding since. Of course, we were overjoyed for him, but a few months went by and no invitation came. Every time we asked, Jason would say they hadn't been sent out yet and changed the subject. Well, last week my husband saw a Twitter post from one of Jason's friends, his groomsmen. That was a few weeks back with the invitation in hand. We confronted Jason about it the next time he came over, only for him to drop the bomb on us that we hadn't been invited. We asked why, and he said his parents didn't want us there and wouldn't come if we did. I was effing furious. I asked him, how could he choose those pieces of trash over us? Why they were so important? What did we do to deserve this kind of treatment? His answer, they understand me better. They're my people. At this point, my husband was crying, asking, how could he do this? I've only ever been truly angry a few times in life, and this moment managed to top all of them. I threw him out right then and there and told him to never come back, that he wasn't our son anymore. I spent the rest of the day hugging my husband and trying to calm him down. The next day I canceled everything we'd paid for the wedding, which was basically everything important, even the ones we couldn't get a refund on. Of course, Jason had the gall to call and scream at me, asking how I could do that to him. Where would he find replacements for a wedding that was supposed to happen only a few months from now? I told him I didn't give a shit and said, maybe you should ask those 2 leeches you call parents for some help. 19 effing years of my goddamn life spent raising and loving a kid that I considered my own son, only to be treated like garbage. Giving blood, sweat, and tears so he would have a good life, all the love we could possibly give, and that's what we get as a reward. As for why I'm asking if I'm the a-hole, some people have been calling and messaging us, mostly Jason's friends and a few of our family members, calling us heartless and monsters for doing what we did to him, and that's honestly got me questioning if I went a bit too far in anger. After all, parents are supposed to love unconditionally, right? But if so, how do we ever get over something like this? How can we deal with this feeling of betrayal? Are we justified in feeling like that? So I need an edit. Edit. I've added a comment for further clarification of a few points I've seen asked in the comments and my PMs. Please refer to that if you have any questions. Edit 2. I'm seeing quite a few racist comments in this post, and to the people that are making them, I have this to say, EF you. EF with that rhetoric. I do not appreciate it and would rather if you guys left. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.